Hi everyone, welcome back to Crime Whisper, the place where true crime meets midnight curiosity. If you're watching this to relax or drift off to sleep, you're not alone. Before we begin, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Now, let's dive into tonight's chilling case. The disappearance of Mariela Botella Valadez. Mariela Botella Valadez was a bright, ambitious American student who had only planned a short, fun weekend in Dallas, a chance to catch up with friends and unwind at a local nightclub. But a chance encounter that night would change everything. At the club, Mariela met a man, an aspiring rapper, who took an immediate interest in her. He suggested they continue the night somewhere more private. What Mariela didn't know was that this man was already entangled in a toxic and possessive love triangle, and her presence, innocent and spontaneous, would trigger a chain of events fueled by jealousy, obsession, and control. Tragically, Mariela would never make it home. Her death would reveal more than just a violent love affair gone wrong. Investigators would uncover a disturbing blend of dark romance, manipulation, occultism, and a network of lies that would stretch across state lines. But thanks to the relentless efforts of law enforcement, every piece of this grim puzzle would eventually fall into place. Who was Mariela? Mariela Botella Valadez was born in 1997 in Seattle, Washington, the oldest of two children in a close-knit Latin American family. She grew up alongside her younger brother and was known for her warm, outgoing nature. Friends described her as kind-hearted, sociable, and intelligent, someone who made others feel seen. Mariela excelled in school and eventually enrolled at a well-respected university. She had a natural beauty, petite, with flowing brunette hair, big brown eyes, and a magnetic smile. She loved fashion, parties, and laughter, but beneath the fun-loving exterior, she was focused, responsible, and deeply connected to her family. October 2020, the last weekend on Saturday, October 3rd, 2020. Mariela flew to Dallas to reconnect with old friends for the weekend. It was meant to be a quick getaway. She had every intention of returning home on Monday, October 5th. To resume classes, her brother was scheduled to pick her up from the airport that morning, but when the plane arrived, Mariela wasn't on it. At first, her brother thought she might have missed the flight, but calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. She didn't answer messages, growing more concerned. He contacted their parents, and they quickly realized something was very wrong. Mariela wasn't the type to disappear without a word. A worrying discovery, the family began calling everyone Mariela had seen in Dallas, trying to piece together her final hours. They soon learned she had spent Sunday night at one of Dallas's most popular nightclubs. Witnesses said she had been dancing with a man, described as a black male in his 20s, who went by the name Chuck. They drank together, laughed, and appeared to be enjoying each other's company. Then, just before closing, the two left the club, and Mariela was never seen again. Her phone remained off. Her social media went silent. There were no transactions on her bank cards. The first clues: Mariela's parents filed a missing persons report with the Dallas Police Department. Investigators quickly obtained surveillance footage from outside the club, and there they saw Mariela leaving with a man in a black Audi, though the footage was grainy and the man's face hard to identify. Mariela appeared to go with him voluntarily, but after that, the trail went cold. She hadn't boarded her return flight. No one had heard from her. Her phone data stopped transmitting, and Chucky wasn't who he appeared to be, as police would soon learn. He had a hidden life and some very dangerous connections. To be continued in the next part. We'll uncover who Chuck really was, the twisted relationship triangle he was part of, and the heartbreaking discovery that turned Mariela's missing person case into a full-blown homicide investigation. The trail leads to Chuck and a house of secret sin, the search for Mariela Botella Valadez, Investigators worked tirelessly to trace her. Final steps. One of her friends mentioned a name, Chuck, possibly the man she had left the nightclub with. But that clue, on its own, wasn't much. Then came a breakthrough. Surveillance footage from street cameras showed the black Audi Mariella had left him. The vehicle had made a stop shortly after the club, at a nearby supermarket. Additional security footage captured the pair walking through the store together. What they saw raised more questions than answers. Mariella and the man appeared affectionate, smiling at one another. She picked out a few drinks and some candy, while he paid for everything with a credit card. That card was registered to a man named Charles Beltran, and with that, the mystery man had a name. Who was Charles Beltran? Charles Chuck Beltran was a 31-year-old aspiring rapper with a rising profile in the local Dallas music scene. On the surface, he was talented, charismatic, and hungry for success. But beneath that, he carried a dark past. Charles had previously served time for robbery and armed assault, not once, but twice. He'd been released on parole not long before he met Mariella. Still, his career was picking up momentum. He was preparing to release a new album, and videos of him performing were beginning to gain traction online. Investigators soon learned where Beltran had been living, a house owned by a woman named Lisa Dyke. Charles had been renting a room there. More tellingly, cell phone records placed Mariella's phone in that same house on the night she disappeared. When authorities arrived at the address, accompanied by an FBI agent, they found the house eerily silent and completely empty. A strange and filthy house. The police contacted Lisa Dyke by phone. She claimed to be out of state on business. Yes, she confirmed, Charles had lived there, but insisted he moved out weeks ago, and she had no idea where he went. It wasn't adding up. So, police obtained a warrant to search the home. What they found inside was unsettling. The house was in disarray. Dirty dishes overflowed from the sink. Moldy food sat rotting on counters. Trash filled corners of the rooms. It looked like the occupants had fled in a hurry, taking only essentials and leaving behind a mess of chaos and filth. More disturbing were the piles of empty cleaning supply bottles scattered around. Bleach, detergents, stains on the carpet, and streaks on the floor suggested something or someone had been scrubbed away. Then, upstairs, in one of the bedrooms, officers discovered something chilling. A statue of Santa Muerte, cloaked in black, holding a scythe, surrounded by melted candles, dried flowers, and ritual bowls. It wasn't just odd decor. It resembled an altar. For those unfamiliar, Santa Muerte, or Holy Death, is a controversial Mexican folk saint often associated with protection, but also with the criminal underworld and the occult. What had happened in this house? A crime scene revealed using forensic luminol and blood detection tools. Investigators examined the entire home. Traces of blood lit up the hallway, the bathroom, and one of the bedrooms, the one Charles had been living in. Despite the desperate attempts to clean it, the blood had seeped through the carpet, under the baseboards, and into the furniture. DNA testing confirmed what everyone feared. The blood belonged to Mariella. The room wasn't just where something had happened. It was where a violent assault had taken place. Police officially declared it a crime scene, but there was still no sign of Charles, no sign of Mariella's body, and no answers about who else might have been involved. The vanishing residence, Lisa Dyke, had not only vanished, she had also listed the house for sale shortly before police arrived. Investigators spoke to neighbors, who revealed that 3 people had been living in the house. 57-year-old Lisa Dyke, the homeowner, 48-year-old Nina Morano, and 31-year-old Charles Beltran. The dynamics between them were unusual and unclear. Digging deeper, police learned that Lisa Dyke was a former attorney, known for her tough personality and aggressive style. She'd been married 3 times and was recently widowed, inheriting a large sum of money. There was no financial reason for her to rent out her home, especially not to a stranger like Charles, so why had she taken him in? The answer was stranger than fiction. A toxic triangle. Lisa had apparently taken a keen interest in Charles in his music career. She allowed him to move into her home, helped build him a small recording studio, even funded his music videos and wardrobe. She bought him a car and covered his expenses, all while claiming their relationship was strictly business. But friends told another story. One of Lisa's close friends revealed that she had confided in her about Charles, describing him as an amazing lover. Despite being nearly 3 decades older, Lisa appeared infatuated with the younger man. She lost over 50 pounds, changed her wardrobe, got tattoos, and started wearing bright makeup, all in an effort to recapture her youth. Most shocking of all, Lisa evicted her own grown children from the house, saying they interfered with her personal life. And then there was Nina Morano, Lisa's long-term partner. The two women had been romantically involved for years, and after Lisa's last husband passed away, they made their relationship official. Nina moved in and became Lisa's legal spouse. So why was Charles, a much younger man, also living in the same house? Friends believed the three were entangled in a strange and volatile love triangle, one marked by manipulation, jealousy. The disappearance deepens after Mariella vanished. Not one of the 3 house residents was seen again. Lisa briefly answered one phone call, stating she was out of state, and then her line went dead. Charles and Nina were also unreachable. Investigators traced cell phone activity from all 4 individuals on the night of October 5th. The data confirmed that Mariella, Lisa, Nina, and Charles were all at the house, the same house where blood was later found. Then, in the early hours of the morning, all signals moved to a wooded area outside Dallas, a remote, overgrown stretch of land. Shortly afterward, the devices went offline. Lisa briefly reappeared on a second work phone, but it too went silent. A grisly discovery, despite extensive searches. Authorities found no sign of Mariella in the months that followed. As the year drew to a close, hope was fading done. Then, in March 2021, a hunter exploring the woods stumbled upon a human skull. Police were immediately alerted, and the skeletal remains were sent for forensic analysis. Dental records confirmed the worst. The remains belonged to Mariela Botella Valadez. The body had been in the forest for months, exposed to the elements and wild animals. It was so badly decomposed that determining a cause of death was impossible. However, markings on several bones were consistent with knife wounds, a brutal end, though it wasn't clear if those injuries were the fatal ones, closing in on the suspects following the discovery. The investigation shifted into high gear. Authorities located Lisa and Nina in Miami, Florida, living in a beachfront rental. Only Nina was arrested initially. Lisa had already vanished again. She had sold property in South Carolina and was likely liquidating assets to fund their escape. Within a month, Lisa was tracked down and taken into custody. Both women were extradited to Texas and held on $500,000 bail each, which they somehow managed to post. They were released under house arrest and fitted with tracking bracelets, but they weren't done running a calculated escape in August 2021. During the chaos of the holiday season, Lisa and Nina's electronic monitors suddenly went offline. By the time authorities responded, the women had vanished. They had planned this for months and executed it flawlessly. The pair crossed the border into Mexico, then flew to South Korea, before finally disappearing in Cambodia. The FBI, now leading the case, coordinated with international law enforcement. For months, the fugitives stayed under the radar until a surveillance camera caught them withdrawing a large amount of cash from an ATM. Another camera recorded the license plate of the vehicle they used. That lead brought authorities to a house rented by 2 extravagant foreign women. In February 2022, Lisa Dyke and Nina Morano were rearrested and extradited back to the United States. This time, bail was denied. They were placed in jail to await trial. The final betrayal. Charles's confession. Meanwhile, Charles Beltran had been arrested months earlier in Utah, where he was hiding out at an ex-girlfriend's home. The woman, raising a 5-year-old son fathered by Beltran, believed he had returned for good. She had no idea he was a fugitive in a murder investigation. At first, Charles stayed silent, convinced that Lisa, with her money and connections, would get him out of jail. But as months passed, reality sank in. Lisa was only looking out for herself. She wasn't coming to save him, so Charles made a decision. On Christmas Eve, 2021, he agreed to talk. What he confessed next stunned even seasoned detectives. Charles's chilling confession in the end. It was Charles Chuck Beltran who broke first, facing mounting evidence, abandonment by his former lovers, and the growing weight of guilt. Charles finally told investigators what happened on the night of October 5, 2020, the night Mariela Botella Valadas died. His confession was shocking. Charles admitted that his relationships with Lisa Dyke and Nina Morano were purely transactional. He said he didn't love them. He tolerated their presence because they supported his music career financially and logistically. He lived rent-free, drove a car they bought him, and recorded music in a studio they helped build. In exchange, he gave them companionship and shared their bed. But behind closed doors, Charles frequently pursued younger, attractive women, and he never hid it. While Nina seemed indifferent to his flings, Lisa was another story. Her jealousy simmered beneath the surface, and sometimes it erupted. That jealousy, Charles claimed, is what led to murder. The night Mariela died, according to Charles, he met Mariela that night at the club. She was stunning, graceful, and interested in him. They drank, danced, and when he suggested they go back to his place, she agreed. They arrived late. Lisa and Nina were asleep. Charles took Mariela straight to his room. There, the two became intimate, then fell asleep. What happened next was pure chaos. In the middle of the night, Lisa entered the room. Seeing the young, beautiful woman asleep in Charles's bed sent her into a violent rage. Without a word, she turned and stormed into the kitchen, returning moments later with a large kitchen knife. Charles said he was jolted awake by the noise. Still groggy and partially drunk, he turned on the light and saw a nightmare unfolding in front of him. Lisa had already attacked. Mariela's body had slipped from the bed and lay motionless on the floor, blood soaking into the carpet. She had been stabbed multiple times. Then Nina entered the room. All three stood in silence. No one called 911. No one offered help. They simply stared. When Charles finally gathered his thoughts, fear set in. With his criminal record, he was certain the murder would be pinned on him. Lisa and Nina, both respected lawyers, could easily escape blame. And so, he agreed to help hide the body and destroy the evidence. The aftermath. Charles stayed with friends for several days after the killing. When he returned to the house to collect his belongings, he noticed the bloodstains were nearly gone. Lisa calmly told him she and Nina had handled it. The crime scene had been cleaned, the carpet scrubbed, the evidence erased. The three made a pact to flee town. They would lay low and watch what unfolded from a distance. But that silence didn't last. Lisa Dyke's defense at trial. Lisa Dyke painted a very different story. Her attorneys argued that she had no motive to harm Mariela. Lisa, they claimed, had only a professional relationship with Charles, nothing more. He was an investment, not a lover. They pointed to her recent legal marriage to Nina as proof she was happy and emotionally fulfilled. If she was just his sponsor, why would she care who he slept with? But there were cracks in that narrative. One major inconsistency was the fact that, after marrying Nina, both women took Charles's last name, an inexplicable move, if, as they claimed, he meant nothing to them. Lisa flipped the story. She claimed Charles had brought Mariela home, and that an argument broke out between them after sex. He became enraged, violent. She and Nina heard the commotion. rushed into the room, but by the time they got there, it was too late. Mariella was already dead. They helped cover it up, Lisa said, only because they feared for their own lives. Witness testimonies in the Santa Morte Shrine book. Witnesses told another story. A close friend of Lisa's testified that Lisa was obsessed with Charles and had repeatedly expressed a desire to eliminate any woman who showed interest in him. The friend described Lisa as emotionally unstable and deeply possessive. She also recalled something disturbing during a visit to Lisa's home. She had noticed a black statue cloaked in robes, the Santa Morte figure. It sat at the center of a makeshift altar with candles and flowers. Lisa joked that she practiced black magic and could cast spells to make men love her. The friend said she laughed it off at the time, but now it seemed more sinister. Was the altar symbolic of something darker? A desperate attempt to control the young man she couldn't keep? The desperate self. Another witness, a real estate agent, testified that Lisa and Nina had reached out shortly after Mariella disappeared. They wanted to sell several properties fast, but they couldn't sell the Dallas home just yet. Not while it was under investigation for a possible murder. The pressure was mounting, and then Mariella's remains were found. The trial was about to reach its most pivotal point. Trial and sentencing. Justice for Mariella Charles Beltran's full confession and cooperation with investigators earned him some leniency. But for Lisa Dyke and Nina Marano, any sympathy was lost the moment they attempted to flee the country. In March 2023, the court found Lisa Dyke, also known as Lisa DJ Beltran, guilty of the brutal murder of 23-year-old Mariella Valadez. She was also convicted of evidence tampering and attempting to flee prosecution. The sentence was swift and final. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. As for Nina Marano and Charles Beltran, both admitted guilt and cooperated with authorities. Their charges were limited to evidence concealment. Nina was sentenced to 7 years, with the possibility of early release in just 3, due to good behavior. Charles, a repeat offender, received 12 years, with parole eligibility after 8. Justice, though delayed, had finally been served. Milford, Connecticut. A town unaware of the storm to come. Milford is a picturesque coastal town nestled along Connecticut's Long Island Sound. With a population just over 50,000, it offers historic charm, scenic waterfronts, and a close-knit community. But in December 2022, this quiet town was about to witness a nightmare that no one could have predicted. The life of Julie Manogorn on July 19, 1982, in Goshen, New York. Julie Minogue was raised in a loving home by parents, Gerald Minogue and Sandra Biash Doper. Alongside her siblings, sister Allison and brother Peter, Julie thrived, both socially and academically. She attended the Monroe-Woodbury School District, graduating from Monroe-Woodbury High School before continuing her studies at Orange County Community College. Eventually, Julie found her calling as a medical assistant at Connecticut Coastal Obstetrics and Gynecology. She embraced life, keeping active with daily walks and runs. But above all else, Julie's true joy was motherhood. She raised 2 sons, Nicholas Keith Turner, who served honorably in the U.S. Coast Guard, and Sean Michael Turner, a vibrant 17-year-old high school senior, in 2017. Julie found love again with Jan Anthony DeWitt, a man from Roxbury. They welcomed a 3rd child, Luke Anthony Minogue, in 2019. But over time, the relationship soured. By 2021, Julie had made the difficult decision to leave Jan. She moved with her 3 sons to a condo on Salem Walk in Milford, focusing entirely on rebuilding a peaceful life. She was 40, single, and devoted to her boys. Things finally seemed to be falling into place, but horror was only days away. December 6, 2022. A night of terror was late when 17-year-old Nicholas was stirred awake by something eerie. Screams at first, he ignored them. Maybe it was a TV or noise from outside, but the cries grew louder, desperate. panicked, unmistakably real. Nicholas bolted out of bed and rushed downstairs. In the shadows of the dimly lit home, he saw a sight that would haunt him forever. His mother, Julie, lay motionless on the floor, covered in blood. Towering over her, a man holding an axe. Before Nicholas could react, he heard the attacker snarl chilling words. "You didn't believe me." Terror overtook him. The teenager raced back upstairs, locked the door, and shoved a chair under the handle. With trembling hands, he dialed 911, whispering to the operator what he had just seen, in a desperate attempt to protect himself and summon help. He opened his window and began calling out to the street below. Minutes later, Milford police arrived at the scene, but Nicholas, gripped by fear, jumped out the window. That's when he heard the officers call out, not the killer. He was finally safe. The scene inside the house when police entered the condo. What they found was heartbreaking. Julie Minogue's lifeless body was sprawled on the kitchen floor, drenched in blood. Her head and upper body bore multiple deep gashes. Vicious, frenzied strikes from an axe. The weapon was found resting on the gas stove, stained and heavy with death. In the living room, the scene was even more devastating. 3-year-old Luke, Julie's youngest son, sat silently on the couch. He wasn't crying. He wasn't speaking. He simply stared, frozen in shock. An officer immediately sat beside him, providing gentle comfort until more help arrived. Autopsy and evidence. Julie's body was transported to the Connecticut office of the chief medical examiner, where a thorough autopsy was performed. The findings were grim. Julie had suffered multiple chop wounds and blunt force trauma to the head, torso, and limbs. The medical examiner confirmed these as the cause of death. Back at the condo, police meticulously processed the scene. Every room was searched for evidence, every drawer opened, every corner examined. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with fear and disbelief. Word spread quickly. Milford, a place known for peace and family life, had been rocked by something unspeakable, and the big question still remained. Who did this to Julie Minogue, and why? A community steps forward as the investigation into Julie Minogue's murder intensified. The Milford community rallied behind law enforcement, offering support in any way they could. Then came a breakthrough. A neighbor from the Long Meadow complex approached detectives with something unexpected. Ring camera footage from outside his home. Investigators immediately seized the opportunity, knowing that any shred of video could hold a critical clue. What they saw sent a chill through the room. The footage captured a lone figure walking in the night, an axe clutched in his hand, closely matching the description Nicholas had given of the man he saw standing over his mother's body. Suddenly, a shadow had a face. A confession from the past later. That same day, December 6, 2022, police received another shocking call. A woman, her voice trembling with fear, told the dispatcher that her son had just confessed over the phone. "He told me he killed his girlfriend." Authorities moved fast. They tracked down the woman and questioned her. That's when the name surfaced: Jan Anthony Duet. He wasn't just any suspect. He was Julie's former partner, the father of her youngest child, and a man with a history of violence. Detectives tried to call him directly, but the moment they identified themselves, Jan hung up. It was time to dig into his past. Who is Jan Anthony Duet? Born in 1979 in Roxbury, Connecticut, Jan Duet was a man of many faces. A talented ice hockey player, a college graduate with a degree in history from Siena College, and later, a firefighter and personal trainer. In 2009, he joined the U.S. Marine Corps, eventually becoming a machine gun section leader in the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. He served multiple tours in Afghanistan and across the Middle East, rising to the rank of Lance Corporal. Photos from 2011 showed him manning a heavy machine gun aboard the USS Kearsarge, a decorated Marine, highly trained and disciplined. But that discipline didn't extend into his personal life. A history of violence. Jan's troubling behavior had been documented for years. In 2006, he was arrested for DUI and traffic violations in Connecticut. He pleaded guilty and received a suspended sentence and probation. Then, things worsened. In 2019, he was arrested by Milford police for assault. Court records show that a protective order was issued shortly after Julie had reported that Jan had thrown a heavy object at her and smashed her phone to prevent her from calling for help. Terrified, she fled to a neighbor's house and contacted police. More charges came in 2021, this time in Wake County, North Carolina, where Jan was accused of assaulting a woman and emergency responders. He pleaded guilty and served 95 days in jail, though the details of his incarceration remained murky. And behind these legal battles, another disturbing pattern emerged. A pattern of abuse. Jan's abuse was not sporadic, it was systematic. Several protective orders were filed against him by Julie in November 2019, and again in January 2021. These were not only to protect her, but also her children, who had been present during his violent outbursts. In one particularly disturbing incident, Jan allegedly intoxicated threw a baby playpen at Julie's head, injuring her while their young children watched. During his time in rehab, Julie used the opportunity to seek court protection. Despite everything, Jan was granted supervised visitation rights for his son, Luke. It was a decision that weighed heavily on Julie's mind. Family Court 10 August 2021. Julie filed a child support petition for their son Luke. By October, the court ruled in her favor and ordered Jan to pay. But the courtroom battles didn't end there. In December 2021, Jan filed a motion of his own, seeking changes to his visitation schedule. A judge granted supervised visitation in April 2022, with another hearing set for April 2023 to further address custody and support matters. As these legal conflicts unfolded, the tension between Julie and Jan only grew. Julie, trying to rebuild her life and protect her children, may have felt she was finally gaining some control. But behind the scenes, Jan was unraveling. The investigation heats up with the video footage in hand, the eyewitness account from Nicholas, and a confession relayed by Jan's own mother. Police now had 3 major leads pointing to one suspect: Jan Dewitt. He had motive. He had a history of abuse, and now he had vanished. The next chapter would focus on finding him, because Julie Minogue's murder wasn't just a case of domestic violence. It was a premeditated act, driven by obsession, rage, and loss of control. Justice delayed, not denied, as investigators dug deeper into Julie Minogue's final weeks. A clearer picture emerged, one of rising tension, relentless harassment, and a woman who did everything in her power to protect herself and her children. On November 14, 2022, just 3 weeks before her brutal murder, Julie made a critical move. She walked into the Milford Police Department to file a complaint against her ex, Jan Dewitt. Julie told Officer Scott Nain that Jan had sent her over 200 text messages in just 48 hours, in direct violation of an active protective order issued against him. Officer Nain reviewed her phone and gathered evidence, taking her complaint seriously. The assistant state's attorney asked for more supporting information, and the case was delayed. In the careful dance between law and justice, every step required precision, but time was running out. A final plea for protection on December 1st, 2022. Julie stood before a judge during a civil restraining order hearing. For nearly an hour, she laid out her fears in detail. She shared screenshots of the messages. She spoke of Jan's mental health issues, his substance abuse, his bipolar rages, and violent outbursts. She emphasized the need for him to receive help, but not at her family's expense. The judge listened. A no-contact restraining order was issued that same day, but it would prove to be too late. Just 5 days later, on December 6th, Julie was murdered in her own home, killed with an axe while her son and toddler were in the house. The manhunt begins. After discovering Julie's lifeless body, investigators worked around the clock to find her killer. Every lead was pursued. Every witness was interviewed. Soon, the search led them to a dive bar on Ocean Avenue in West Haven. Detectives went door to door, showing photos of the suspect and asking locals to report anything unusual. 2 individuals stepped forward. They claimed to have seen a man matching Yan's description, lingering in the parking lot. One of the witnesses, asked to remain anonymous, said the man had entered a nearby food truck. Police surrounded the area without resistance. They apprehended Yan Duet that same evening, December 6, 2022, just hours after the murder. The nightmare was far from over, but it was a start. A chilling confession back at the station. Detectives began their interrogation. At first, Yan sat in silent scold, detached, uncooperative. But hours into questioning, his mask cracked. He began to talk, and what he revealed chilled investigators to their core. He confessed that he had broken into Julie's home through the kitchen window, waiting silently for her to return. When she walked in, he ambushed her, swinging the axe without mercy. Julie's teenage son, Nicholas, descended the stairs just as the attack unfolded. Horrified by the bloodshed, Yan panicked and fled, leaving the axe on the stove as he escaped into the night. The confession corroborated everything Nicholas had seen. It aligned with the Ring camera footage, the timeline, and forensic evidence. The courtroom reckoning on December 7, 2022. Yan Duet appeared in State Superior Court in Milford. Assistant State's Attorney Alana Paul addressed the court, stating that Yan had admitted to the murder. But even without his confession, she said, the case was overwhelming. There was video, surveillance, there was witness testimony, there was the physical evidence, and there was the terror in Nicholas's voice during that 911 call. Because of Yan's violent past, his disregard for court orders, and the sheer brutality of the crime, Attorney Paul requested an unprecedented bond. Judge Arden Grudgens agreed. Yan Duet's bond was set at $5 million. The judge noted the extreme danger Yan posed not just to the public, but to the very integrity of the justice system. Yan was placed on suicide watch as he awaited further hearings. The final charges by December 14th. The full extent of the prosecution's case had come into view. In addition to murder, Yan Duet was officially charged with violation of a protective order, violation of a civil restraining order, risk of injury to a minor, reckless endangerment. Authorities weren't just prosecuting a single act of violence, they were seeking accountability for years of escalating abuse, and for the terror Julie and her sons endured in the months and weeks before her death, a life cut short. A voice silenced. Julie Minogue did everything right. She sought help. She went to court. She pleaded for protection, and yet the system failed her. It's a tragedy that speaks to a broader issue, a cycle of domestic violence, substance abuse, and missed warning signs that too often ends in the same fatal way. Julie was a mother, a friend, a healthcare worker, and a survivor. She deserved better. Her children deserved better. And now, all that's left is the pursuit of justice. Justice and reflection. The case of Julie Minogue and the tragedy of Tess Ritchie. Following the murder of Julie Minogue, the legal process pushed forward. A hearing was scheduled for Yan Duet's pending criminal cases on April 6, 2023. While Duet had already confessed to Julie's murder, he had yet to formally enter a plea. Prosecutors reiterated that he had admitted to the crime, though. Police have not released further details about the upcoming proceedings. Julie's devastated family released a statement shortly afterward, expressing not only their grief, but also their determination to seek justice. They vowed to hold accountable those in the system who had failed to protect Julie despite her repeated pleas. Their hope is that her case will ignite change, that it becomes a catalyst for stronger protections against domestic violence and more responsive systems for victims in need. Julie's case was a heartbreaking mix of systemic failures and the premeditated rage of a man unwilling to let go. But her family's voice remained strong, demanding a better future for others walking the same path she did. Another life lost. The case of Tess Ritchie was born on November 30th, 1994, the youngest of 5 daughters in a close-knit Canadian family from North Bay. At 19, she moved to Toronto, full of dreams and energy. Tess was deeply loved. Her sister Vina Ritchie described her as someone who adored her life, her dogs, and her family. Though she worked as a waitress, her true dream was to become a flight attendant, a dream she was actively pursuing, having just completed a course at Seneca College in North Toronto. She applied to airlines and hotels, hoping for an opportunity. When those doors didn't open, Tess began learning Italian and looking for au pair jobs in Italy. She even shared her journey online. Her final YouTube video, posted on February 23, 2014, offered a vulnerable look into her challenges and hopes. Sadly, 4 years later, her life would take a tragic turn. The night everything changed, on November 23, 2017, Tess was reeling from a recent breakup with her boyfriend, Julian. Distraught and emotionally fragile, she turned to her older sister Rachel, who later described Tess as her soulmate. Tess spent most of the day with Rachel, talking, shopping, visiting a dog park. Rachel prepared dinner, but Tess, lost in heartache, barely ate. Still, she had plans for the evening. She arranged to meet an old school friend, Riley Seymour, who, like Tess, had moved from North Bay to Toronto. The two planned to go to Cruise and Tango's, a well-known drag bar in the Church and Wellesley neighborhood. That night, Rachel's partner ordered Tess an Uber. Rachel watched her sister run down the front steps and hop in. She didn't know it would be the last time she'd ever see her alive. Disappearance and rising panic. Tess arrived at the club around midnight and texted her sister to let her know she was safe. It was second nature. Tess always kept her phone close and stayed in touch with her family. But the next day, things took a terrifying turn. By 6:30 p.m., Rachel had heard nothing. Tess's phone was off. Messages weren't going through. Christine Hermiston, their mother, also couldn't reach her. The family grew anxious. This was completely out of character for Tess. Christine, who had her credit card linked to Tess's Uber account, received a notification that Tess had ordered a ride at 4:02 a.m., but then canceled it shortly after. Rachel sent her partner to check Tess's Scarborough apartment, while she began calling friends in hospitals. That night, the family filed a missing person report, but the police response was slow. According to the family, they were the ones taking real action, putting up flyers, calling Tess's friends, and organizing a search. The last known movements. It eventually came to light that Tess's friend Riley had made it home safely that night. When asked what had happened, Riley explained that the two had been drinking heavily and were asked to leave the bar shortly after 2 a.m. They walked along Wellesley Street, grabbing hot dogs from a street vendor. Tess, a vegetarian, got into an argument with the vendor, believing she'd been given meat. In frustration, she allegedly sprayed mustard on the cart. After the incident, the two fled toward Dundonald Street with a man who had joined them. None of them remembered the man's name. On Dundonald Street, the trio encountered a woman named Michelle D., who was sitting on her porch. The three stopped and talked for around 20 minutes. During the conversation, Tess revealed she had recently broken up with her boyfriend and was having a difficult time. Michelle, noticing Tess's distress, tried to offer support. What no one realized was that this would be the last time Tess Ritchie was seen alive by someone outside of the crime. The tragic final hours of Tess Ritchie before parting ways. Tess Ritchie and Michelle Depp exchanged phone numbers. Michelle would later recall that although Tess seemed like a young woman trying to enjoy the night, there was a deep sadness in her eyes. The recent breakup with her boyfriend, Julian, clearly weighed heavily on her. "I told her everything gets better," Michelle said, "and to just hang in there." At 4 a.m., Riley, Tess's friend, received a text from her boyfriend asking her to come home. She said goodbye to Tess and walked off toward Yonge Street, leaving Tess alone. Disappointed by being left behind, Tess ordered an Uber at 4:02 a.m., suggesting that she had decided to go home as well. However, when the driver arrived at 4:14 a.m., Tess wasn't there, a family's worst fear confirmed. Despite the location of her body, so close to where she vanished, police had failed to find her. The family and public were left to ask, why hadn't the Toronto police searched the area more thoroughly? Then came the next blow. Shortly after the discovery, an anonymous police source told the press that Tess had advertised intimate services online and worked at a strip club. The implication was clear. They were framing her as a higher-risk lifestyle victim, as if to justify the lack of urgency. Christine was outraged. She was not working in the sex trade, she said. That was a blatant lie. They leaked that so it would seem like it wasn't their fault. In truth, Tess had worked as a waitress at a strip club, but had quit after less than 2 weeks. The supposed escorting, merely a dating profile. The suggestion that she lived a higher-risk lifestyle was not only false, but deeply damaging. An autopsy reveals the truth. Police initially did not suspect foul play, but after the autopsy, the truth came out. Tess died from neck compression, strangled to death. Forensic analysis also revealed seminal fluid on her clothing and saliva on her bra. Male DNA was recovered from the scene, and suddenly, the case turned into a homicide investigation. Reilly had mentioned a man who had been with them that night. After she left, Tess had stayed behind with him. Investigators turned to CCTV footage for answers. Surveillance captured Tess and the man walking, hand in hand, up the gravel path near where her body was eventually found. A final frame showed them together at 4:04 a.m. 46 minutes later. Another camera showed the man leaving the area alone. Tess was never seen again. A face. Then a name. December 10th, police held a press conference and released images of the man from surveillance footage, poor quality, stills from an ATM camera near the hot dog cart. That same day, a call came in to the police station. "I'm the guy in the photo," the voice said. The man was identified as 21-year-old Kalen Schlatter at the time. Schlatter was living with his parents and younger brother in North Toronto. He had completed a postgraduate course in auto mechanics and worked part-time in construction with his father. Schlatter, accompanied by his parents and lawyer, came to the police station. He answered a few questions, but soon refused to say more. However, he unknowingly left behind a key piece of evidence. While in the interview room, he threw a water bottle into the trash. Police recovered it. Forensic testing later confirmed that his DNA matched the saliva and semen found on Tess Ritchie's body, with DNA confirmation in hand. Authorities moved quickly, though they had initially considered a long-term surveillance operation. The evidence was enough to act. Arrest and undercover confession. On February 4, 2018. Police arrested Schlatter after he watched the Super Bowl with his family at a Toronto cinema. He was taken to 13 Division and placed in a holding cell. What Schlatter didn't know was that the men in the adjacent cells were undercover officers, and soon he would tell them everything. Confession in the holding cells inside a Toronto police station. Kalen Schlatter sat between two seemingly ordinary inmates. None of the three men could see one another. Their cells faced the same wall, but the silence didn't last long. For hours, the men talked. Schlatter, unaware that both men beside him were undercover officers, began bragging. He spoke about his love for card games and claimed he'd slept with over 40 women, despite being only 21. What he didn't mention, however, was that he was attracted to both men and women, a detail that emerged later in court. As the conversation deepened, Schlatter began speaking about Tess Ritchie. At first, he claimed she was alive when he left her, but over time, his story shifted. He admitted that alcohol clouded his memory, and maybe, just maybe, something had happened that night that he didn't fully remember. Police were already certain he was lying. They charged Kaylin Schlatter with the murder of Tess Ritchie. Police misconduct and public outcry. In June 2018, two Toronto police officers, Alan McCullough and Michael Jones, were charged with misconduct under Ontario's Police Services Act. They were accused of failing to search the surrounding properties, speak to nearby residents, or alert a supervisor when Tess was reported missing. Had they done their jobs correctly, Tess may have been found earlier. She had died just yards away from where she was last seen. Despite the charges, both officers remained on the force and received only internal disciplinary penalties. Trial begins. A tale of lies and D&I. In 2020, Schlatter's 7-week trial began. His defense team presented an alternative theory. Someone else could have accessed the stairwell from behind the building, away from the view of security cameras. They even named another potential suspect, but police had already investigated the man thoroughly and found zero evidence linking him to Tess's death. The prosecution focused on the one thing they couldn't refute: DNA. Schlatter's DNA was found in semen and saliva on Tess's clothing. He admitted he'd been with her that night, but claimed everything had been consensual. He told a detailed and prosecutors argued entirely fabricated story. Schlatter's version of events, according to Schlatter, he had met Tess and her friend really inside the bar, not on the street. Surveillance footage confirmed this. After Tess was asked to leave by security, he claimed he saw her outside and decided to check if she was okay. He said Tess invited him to sit and talk. She was upset about her breakup, so he shared stories about his own past relationships to comfort her. Schlatter even claimed Tess declined a phone call during their conversation, but Tess's phone records showed no such call. Schlatter testified that Tess asked if she could kiss him. They embraced and kissed, he said. Again, surveillance footage showed no signs of intimacy between them on the street. He claimed Tess then asked him to follow her into the stairwell of 582 Church Street. The prosecution didn't buy it. They believed Schlatter offered to walk Tess to her Uber, but led her into the darkness with something entirely different in mind. Only two people knew what really happened that night. One of them was already dead. A second confession in jail while awaiting trial in 2018. Schlatter was held at the Toronto South Detention Center. There, he befriended another inmate, a career criminal with a long rap sheet, referred to only as YS due to a publication. BANYS initially felt sorry for the young man and invited him to share a cell, but he soon grew disturbed. Schlatter cried himself to sleep, afraid of jail and missing his mother, yet YS said he showed no remorse for Tess's death. According to YS, Schlatter eventually confessed. He told him that Tess and he kissed, but when she didn't want to go any further, he lost control. Enraged, he strangled her with a scarf. In court, Schlatter denied ever making those statements. His defense painted YS as a manipulative liar with a criminal history, desperate for a lighter sentence in exchange for cooperation. The verdict: justice for Tess Yvonne. Setting aside witnessed testimony, the physical evidence was damning. Only one person's DNA was found on Tess Ritchie's body, Kaylin Schlatter. During closing arguments, Schlatter's attorney, Lydia Riva, tried to sway the jury. She portrayed her client as a shy, soft-spoken young man with a speech impediment. As hard as it may be to accept, she said, the justice system can get it wrong. Mr. Schlatter was an easy target, but the jury wasn't convinced. On March 23, 2020, after a long, emotionally grueling trial, Kaylin Schlatter was found guilty of first-degree murder, justice, grief, and the fight that remains. On March 23, 2020, Kaylin Schlatter was found guilty of the first-degree murder of Tess Ritchie. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, with eligibility for parole after 25 years, the maximum sentence allowed under Canadian law. But the courtroom victory was bittersweet. For Tess's family, her mother Christine, her Miston, her sisters, and her many supporters. The trial had been an emotional battlefield. At times, the grief was unbearable. Tears and sobs echoed through the courtroom as the reality sank in. While they finally had answers, they would never have Tess again. Evil didn't just take Tess that night, said her sister Vina Ritchie. It sentenced her family to a lifetime of pain. Tess was the heart of our family, and now will always be incomplete. In June 2020, Tess's family filed a $20 million lawsuit against Schlatter, the Toronto police, and other involved parties. Their claim wasn't just about accountability, it was about the psychological devastation they endured, made worse by police negligence. Christine, Tess's mother, was haunted by the fact that she had to travel from North Bay to Toronto and search for her own daughter, a task that should have been the police's responsibility. Do I want to just go inside my house, shut the door, and let it go? Absolutely. But can I? No, I can't, because I can't forget that they let her lay there for 4 days, she said. That image, her daughter's body at the bottom of a stairwell, is burned into her mind forever. Christine remembered Tess as the glue that held the family together. In her absence, everything fell apart. We can hardly look each other in the eye, she admitted. We feel like we all failed Tess. That's why we keep fighting. We won't fail her again. They continue their battle not only for justice, but to make sure no other family experiences what they went through. A new case, a familiar horror, Melanie Stacy Amaya. It was on her 14th birthday, in 2016, that Melanie hosted a party. She invited friends, hoping to make the night unforgettable. She couldn't afford a professional DJ, but through friends, she was connected to Miguel Angel Perea, a sick amateur DJ with charm and raw talent. Melanie was instantly captivated. Miguel had a magnetic presence, confident, respectful, and driven. They began dating shortly after the party, and soon, the two were inseparable, often seen walking through parks or hanging around Medellin streets. They weren't shy about their relationship. Miguel came from a modest background, and despite financial hardship, he earned the trust of Melanie's family. He was polite, respectful, and even opened up about his difficult home life. He claimed his mother disapproved of his musical ambitions, and that conflicts at home sometimes turned violent. Feeling sympathy, Melanie's family welcomed him in. He began spending more time at the house, becoming part of the family fabric. But what they didn't know, and what would only become clear too late, was that Miguel's seemingly respectful demeanor hid something far more sinister, a dangerous love, and a family's worst. Nightmare after Miguel was evicted from his home due to family conflict, Maria Leon, out of compassion, offered him temporary shelter. What she didn't realize was that in doing so, she had unknowingly introduced a volatile presence into her household. At first, the arrangement appeared to work. Melanie and Miguel seemed blissfully happy, living together like young lovers chasing their future. For 6 months, the illusion of harmony held, but soon, the cracks began to show. Miguel's darker traits gradually emerged, and Melanie began to change. Her grades slipped, her behavior grew erratic, her appearance more provocative. She covered her body in increasingly visible tattoos and talked about quitting school altogether. More troubling still, arguments between the two became a common occurrence at first behind closed doors. Then more openly, even within the family home. Maria's concerns escalated when she discovered her daughter was experimenting with illegal substances supplied by Miguel. In tears, Melanie admitted it had happened, but promised it wouldn't again. Maria and her husband Ruben decided Miguel had to leave, but Melanie, ever emotionally entangled, begged them to reconsider, promising both she and Miguel would change. Against their better judgment, the couple relented. It was a decision they would come to deeply regret. In the months that followed, bruises began to appear on Melanie's body. Whenever her parents noticed them, she brushed them off, blaming clumsiness or sports injuries. but Maria suspected the truth was far darker. 6 months later, the truth surfaced during a violent argument when Miguel physically assaulted Melanie so severely she required medical attention. Maria was ready to press charges, but Melanie, desperate to protect Miguel or too afraid to defy him, refused to cooperate. She insisted she'd deny everything in court. Her parents tried to forcibly separate them, but Melanie threatened to run away with Miguel if they interfered. Trapped by love and fear, Melanie remained in the toxic relationship for more than 2 years. This cycle continued. Finally, in May 2018, Melanie found the strength to end things. After yet another heated argument escalated into physical violence, she told Miguel it was over. She demanded he pack up and leave, or she'd call the police. Miguel left, but he was far from done. What followed was a terrifying descent into obsession and control. Miguel began stalking Melanie. He watched where she went, who she spoke to, and repeatedly flooded her with messages, ranging from apologies and love confessions to threats of violence. Maria and Ruben sought a restraining order, but the authorities waved it off, dismissing the situation as nothing more than teenage drama. Even when Maria personally approached the prosecutor's office, she was turned away. Their warnings fell on deaf ears. The belief that an 18-year-old wouldn't truly harm his ex-girlfriend was a deadly miscalculation. The disappearance 2 months later, Miguel seemed to have backed off. Melanie was thriving again. Her grades improved. She reconnected with friends, and she returned to her passion for music. Her parents were relieved. It felt like the nightmare had finally ended. On June 28, 2018, Melanie prepared to attend a friend's birthday party at one of the city's most popular nightclubs. She spent the afternoon carefully doing her makeup, styling her hair, and selecting the perfect outfit before leaving in a waiting taxi. She kissed her mother goodbye and promised she wouldn't be out too late. Maria trusted her daughters, friends. She had no reason to worry, but the following morning, that confidence shattered. Melanie had not returned home. Her phone was off, a red flag. Maria tried to stay calm, telling herself it might just be a dead battery, or that her daughter had stayed over with friends. Around noon, she called Isaac, one of Melanie's closest friends. That's when panic set in. Isaac was stunned. Melanie never showed up to the party. None of their friends had seen or heard from her that night. Maria frantically called more friends, hoping someone had seen her daughter. No one had. She called Melanie's father, William Amaya, who rushed over immediately. Along with Ruben, the three filed a missing persons report, only to be told by police that they had to wait 24 hours before taking action. The police assumed she was just sleeping off the night at a friend's house, but her parents weren't willing to wait. They mobilized family, friends, neighbors, anyone they could, and began their own search. They distributed hundreds of flyers across the city. They retraced Melanie's usual routes, talked to her classmates, scoured bus stops and parks. What they didn't know was that Melanie's life had already been stolen. The betrayal of Bruce Miller, love, lies, and a deadly connection. Bruce Miller's life was a testament to loyalty, hard work, and family devotion. He was a man who lived for others, a tireless provider, a steady protector, and above all, a husband who truly believed that love could conquer all. But in a cruel twist of fate, the very person he cherished most would orchestrate his downfall. Bruce had fallen for Sherry Miller, a woman he not only loved but trusted deeply. After hiring her and helping to raise her 3 children, Bruce's affection blossomed into a full-blown romance. 2 years later, they were married. To cement their bond, he even adopted her children, wanting nothing more than to create a loving, united family. What he didn't realize was that Sherry was living a double life to Bruce. The computer he bought for her was a simple gesture, a gift to support her budding business. But in Sherry's hands, it became a digital weapon, the very tool she would use to plan his murder. When Sherry realized that divorce wouldn't bring her the wealth she desired, she chose a darker path, one paved with deception, manipulation, and betrayal. What makes this case especially chilling is that it may be one of the earliest examples where online communication played a central role in a murder plot. In 1999, when the internet was still relatively new and people believed deleted messages were gone forever, Sherry underestimated how traceable her digital footprint could be. She wasn't alone. At the time, few realized how quickly online chats, emails, and virtual identities could become part of a legal investigation. The Mask of Sherry. Miller Bruce was born on July 26, 1951, in Flint, Michigan. He worked for years as a mechanic at General Motors before opening his own business, a salvage yard. He dealt in spare auto parts, often in cash, and was known to bend the rules, occasionally falsifying license plates. But those who knew Bruce described him as kind-hearted, generous, and someone who rarely pursued romance after 2 failed marriages. That changed when he met Sherry, outwardly. Sherry seemed like a woman seeking stability, but behind closed doors. She led a life of secrecy and fantasy. According to those close to her, she often created online personas and flirted with strangers in internet chat rooms. Some believed Bruce was aware of her virtual escapades but chose to ignore them, preferring the illusion of a happy marriage over confrontation. Despite Sherry's misuse of his credit cards shortly after their wedding, Bruce forgave her. He clung to the belief that they could build something real together. But while Bruce was building a life, Sherry was crafting a fantasy, one that had no room for her husband. By night, she retreated into the world of online flirtation under aliases like Horny, 24221, Love Toli, and I Want Toba Seated. She engaged in sexually explicit chats with strangers. Rather than committing to any one man, she preferred a revolving door of digital lovers. Each new interaction like a level in a game, a twisted competition where her growing sense of control fed her ego. It was in one of these chat rooms that Sherry met Jerry Cassaday. Entered Jerry Cassaday, a former cop. A new pawn. Jerry Cassaday was born on October 6, 1960, in Kansas City, Missouri. From a young age, he dreamed of working for the FBI and began his law enforcement career with the Montana Police, eventually rising to homicide detective. Enraged and devastated, Jerry confronted Sherry by phone. She didn't deny it. Instead, they concluded that Bruce needed to die. Together, they mapped out a plan, when and where to strike, where Jerry would park, and how he would approach. That same night, Jerry left his home in Nevada and drove toward Michigan, his mind spiraling with rage and heartbreak. The murder of Bruce Miller on November 8, 1999. Bruce was wrapping up his day at work when he received a call from Sherry. She asked him to pick up pizza on the way home, a deliberate distraction. As Bruce ended the call, he didn't notice Jerry Cassaday slip behind him. Jerry pulled out a .20 caliber handgun and shot Bruce at close range. Bruce Miller was dead, the victim of a cold and calculated setup. Jerry left Michigan that night. Meanwhile, Sherry got to work crafting an alibi. She contacted Bruce's brother, Chuck, claiming she was worried because Bruce hadn't come home. Alarmed, Chuck and his wife rushed to the salvage yard. There, they made a horrifying discovery. Bruce's lifeless body crumpled near his office. The authorities were called, and at first, the murder appeared to be a botched robbery. Their initial suspect, John Hutchinson, a friend of Bruce's, who owed him over $5,000 and had a brief romantic history with Sherry. He had no solid alibi and failed a polygraph. He was arrested, but later released due to lack of evidence. The case stalled. It grew cold. The cracks began to show in the weeks following Bruce's murder. Sherry's behavior turned heads. She began partying frequently, and before long, she cashed in Bruce's life insurance, sold off his business, and withdrew significant funds from their joint accounts. Practically overnight, she became wealthy. She even invited a new boyfriend to live in the same home she had shared with Bruce. Sherry and Jerry's relationship, meanwhile, disintegrated. Jerry had sacrificed everything for her, and now he realized he had been used. The pregnancy, a lie. The abuse, fabricated. Even the photos she'd sent him were from 1994, years old. Jerry sank into guilt and depression. He had spent nearly a decade as a police officer. He now knew, with clarity, he had been nothing more than a tool in Sherry's scheme, and Bruce Miller had died for it. Jerry's final act in February 11th, 2000. Just 3 months after the murder, Jerry Cassaday took his own life. He was found dead in his rented apartment in Nevada, a .22 caliber rifle by his side. Among his belongings were letters to his family, and one addressed to his lawyer, John Osuno, or Dot. Inside that briefcase was a confession, and the evidence police had been searching for. The note was detailed and damning. Jerry admitted to killing Bruce but placed full responsibility on Sherry. He expressed deep remorse, explaining how he had been manipulated and emotionally blackmailed. She only wanted money, he wrote. She succeeded, and she didn't care who she destroyed along the way. Jerry also revealed he had kept every piece of correspondence, emails, printouts, photos, and chat logs. He instructed his lawyer to turn it all over to law enforcement. Justice at last with this bombshell evidence in hand. Police arrested Sherry Miller and charged her with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Her trial began on December 12, 2000, drawing national attention due to the groundbreaking use of online communication as evidence. Sherry pled not guilty. Her defense argued that Jerry, distraught and suicidal, had fabricated everything. They tried to shift blame to John Hutchinson again and painted Sherry as an innocent widow. But prosecutors presented a mountain of digital evidence, emails, messages, sexually explicit exchanges, staged photos, and a step-by-step plan for Bruce's murder. The jury didn't need long to decide. The verdict on December 22, 2000. Sherry Miller was found guilty of both charges. She was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. The case of Bruce Miller became one of the first high-profile murder cases where digital evidence and internet communication played a central role in unraveling the truth. It stands today as a chilling reminder of how love, when tainted by greed and manipulation, can become a weapon, and how technology, even in its infancy, can both aid and expose a killer. The trial, the release, and another victim, the Sherry Miller and Jackie Waller cases. Just one day after Bruce Miller's death, Sherry began distancing herself from his memory, legally at least. She changed her name and address, and after Jerry Cassaday's suicide, she did the same again. Still, justice caught up with her. After only 2 days of jury deliberation, Sherry Miller was found guilty of second-degree murder on January 9, 2001. She was sentenced to life in prison, but the story didn't end there. A controversial release years later, Sherry's legal team raised concerns about the trial, specifically the admissibility of Jerry Cassaday's suicide note and other written confessions. The defense argued that using those documents as evidence violated due process. In 2008, nearly a decade after the murder, a federal judge agreed. A retrial was ordered, and Sherry was released from prison in July 2009 to await new proceedings. For the next 3 years, she walked free without any restrictions. She had internet access. She joined dating sites. Too many, especially the families of Bruce and Jerry. Her release felt like a gross miscarriage of justice, the result of a legal technicality rather than true innocence. But in August 2012, the district court reversed its earlier decision. Sherry was taken back into custody, where she has remained ever since, a guilty conscience. In April 2016, Sherry wrote a letter that stunned many. For the first time, she admitted her guilt. In it, She explained that her original denials were a strategy advised by her legal counsel, aimed at preserving her chance at appeal. Her lawyers later refuted this claim, stating that if they had known the truth earlier, they would have advised her to take a plea deal, one that could have resulted in a sentence as low as 15 years. But by then, Sherry had already served nearly 2 decades behind bars. During her time out of prison, she had also reconnected with her children, a relationship that she claimed helped her emotionally. In a strange twist of fate, she also married for the 4th time to a man named Michael Denoy, who had first learned about her story through news coverage. He proposed to her the first time they met, on June 1st, 2011. A new case: the disappearance of Jackie Waller. On the morning of June 1st, 2011, a woman named Jackie Waller called her sister Cheryl, letting her know she was heading to pick up her 3 children from her estranged husband, Clay Waller. She said she'd be back later that evening, but she never came home. By 7 p.m., Cheryl grew uneasy. She hadn't heard from Jackie at all, no calls, no messages. Desperate, she drove to the police station and made a chilling statement. "My sister's dead. Clay killed her." 2 officers. The claim was startling. Jackie had only spoken to her sister a few hours earlier. There had been no immediate signs of danger, but what seemed like a gut feeling would later prove to be a haunting truth. The warning signs: Jackie Waller was the embodiment of kindness. Her friends and family described her as gentle, loyal, and nurturing. When she met Clay Waller, he seemed insecure and socially awkward, often mocked because of a speech impediment. But Jackie saw past all that. She defended him, made him feel valued. Her compassion quickly blossomed into love, and not long after, they were married. They were both around 30 and dreamed of starting a family. Jackie was thriving in her career and worked hard to build a safe, stable home. But Clay struggled with jobs, responsibility, and motivation. Jackie became the family's sole breadwinner, managing a full-time job while also running the household. Despite the exhausting routine, she never complained. Still, her dream of motherhood wasn't easy. Jackie struggled to conceive naturally and eventually underwent fertility treatments. When she learned she was pregnant with triplets, her joy was indescribable. The children were born: 2 girls, Addison and Abriel, and a boy, Maddox. A one-sided marriage while Jackie juggled a demanding career and 3 young children. Clay remained uninvolved. He briefly worked for the sheriff's office but was fired after 1 year. Jackie's parents and sister were the only ones who stepped up to help with the children. Clay, meanwhile, offered no support and showed little interest in fatherhood. He didn't work. He didn't help. He simply watched as Jackie did it all. Eventually, their home was foreclosed due to missed mortgage payments. Jackie took the kids and moved in with her sister, while Clay went to stay with a friend. She had finally made the hard decision, filed for divorce. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Jackie Waller's fight for freedom ends in silence. Jackie Waller had finally reached a point of no return. She believed, not just hoped, that she and her 3 young children deserved a better, safer life. When she first brought up the subject of divorce, Clay Waller seemed eerily calm, but that calm soon cracked. His demeanor darkened, and his words turned threatening. The man she once defended became a source of fear. He warned her in chilling terms. Divorcing him would be like signing her own death warrant and possibly that of their children. Jackie was terrified, but not deterred. She had lived in fear long enough. Determined to escape the toxicity, she told her family about Clay's worsening behavior and even began keeping a private journal to document what he was doing. She suspected he was following her, watching her every move. Clay claimed he had no idea where Jackie was. He said she had left his house earlier, and he assumed she had gone home. But Cheryl knew something didn't add up. Jackie had no plans to discuss things with Clay. She was only going there to retrieve her son. Cheryl took Jackie's daughters to their parents' home and then drove straight to the police station to file a report. Despite the usual 24-hour rule for missing adults, investigators took her seriously. They agreed. The situation didn't feel right. An unraveling story. Clay told police a now familiar story. He claimed that after leaving the attorney's office, Jackie came back to his house to talk. After chatting, he allegedly left to run errands. When he returned, Jackie and her car were gone. He added that Maddox, their son, was in Illinois with Clay's new girlfriend, and that Jackie knew this, implying she wasn't there to pick him up at all. But Cheryl told detectives that Jackie would never agree to such a thing. Maddox was supposed to be at home, not with a stranger out of state. Jackie would have known and protested that arrangement. Clay's version of events was beginning to unravel. Detectives grew suspicious. Jackie's Honda Pilot was soon found on the side of the interstate with a flat tire. But the scene raised red flags. The puncture appeared intentional, not accidental. The vehicle was unlocked. Inside, investigators found a few bloodstains on the back seat, but no signs of a struggle or theft. There were no personal belongings left behind. The scene appeared staged. The car's location became ground zero for the search effort. A community rallies police and volunteers combed the surrounding woods and fields. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Helicopters scanned the terrain. Jackie's family issued a $3,500 reward, hoping someone might have seen something, anything that could lead them to her. The June heat was punishing, but volunteers refused to stop. People traveled from all over Missouri to help. Yet, day after day, no sign of Jackie emerged. Meanwhile, police kept circling back to Clay. A closer look at Clay Waller when investigators asked to examine Clay's home. He refused and quickly hired an attorney. He stopped answering questions and invoked his rights, but that didn't stop the investigation. Clay had left a voicemail for Jackie after she disappeared. He sounded anxious. Detectives later obtained a search warrant and returned to his house. There, the evidence began to surface. Forensics teams discovered blood-like stains inside his vehicle, but when tested, the stains turned out to be fish blood. Clay had bizarrely smeared it inside the car and recorded it on video as if trying to test how well forensic tools could detect blood inside his home. They noticed part of the carpeting had been ripped out, leaving clear impressions where furniture used to be. More disturbingly, small blood droplets were found on the hallway walls leading to the basement. It was no longer just suspicion. It was turning into a murder investigation. The final discovery: Jackie Waller's fate revealed inside Clay Waller's home. Investigators began to uncover unsettling clues. A section of the floor had been removed. Forensic teams searched beneath the boards and retrieved a blood-soaked carpet. Samples were rushed to the lab for testing. Simultaneously, detectives traced Jackie's final known movements. At 1:10 a.m., she was seen with Clay at a drugstore, both appearing calm, almost routine. Roughly 2 hours later, she was captured on CCTV at an ATM withdrawing cash. That would be the last time Jackie was ever seen alive. Mounting suspicion, just hours later, Clay Waller was spotted with his son and new girlfriend at a toy store. Later that same day, they visited a car wash. Their pickup truck contained a large trash can, raising red flags. Clay had changed clothes. He scrubbed the truck and their boat with meticulous care. As suspicions escalated, investigators released photos of Clay's truck and boat to the public, urging anyone who had seen them to come forward. A breakthrough came when a young couple reported spotting Clay near Devil's Island on the Mississippi River. Police checked Clay's cell tower records. They confirmed the tip. The focus shifted to Devil's Island, but the vast terrain yielded no direct evidence. Jackie remained missing. Then came the lab results. The blood droplets found inside Clay's home belonged to Jackie Waller. With no body, police couldn't make an arrest, but they now operated under the grim assumption that Jackie was no longer alive. A man who knew the system. Detectives brought Clay in for questioning, hoping to break through, but he was calculating. A former sheriff's deputy himself, Clay denied everything. He claimed the blood was from an old accident in the kitchen, still lacking physical proof of death. They had no choice but to release him, but they didn't. Stop watching. Law enforcement kept him under constant surveillance. Clay knew he was being followed. He started playing psychological games with investigators driving to abandoned lots, changing his routines, and deliberately trying to mislead them. Worse still, he began taunting Jackie's grieving family. During search efforts, he'd drive by, flip them off, and shout insults mocking their pain, insisting they'd never find anything. A dangerous man, a desperate family. Amid this emotional warfare, Jackie's sister Cheryl fought for full custody of the triplets. Fearing for their safety, she pushed through the courts and won. Clay's unpredictable, hostile behavior worked against him, but losing custody ignited his rage. He started threatening Cheryl, even posting menacing messages on social media. Cheryl reported him. She saved the evidence. Police seized the opportunity and arrested Clay nearly 5 months after Jackie vanished, on charges of making violent threats in custody. He admitted to writing the messages, but claimed they were fueled by anger, not intention. He still denied any role in Jackie's disappearance, instead fabricating new stories, accusing an imaginary man named Harry. But investigators had already cleared Harry. He had an airtight alibi. All the evidence kept pointing to Clay. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, not for murder, but for threatening Cheryl. Still, authorities never stopped digging. A body without a voice. 2 years after Jackie's disappearance, prosecutors made a bold decision: charge Clay with her murder, even without a body. It was a high-stakes gamble. If the case collapsed in court, they could never charge him again due to double jeopardy laws. But the mountain of circumstantial evidence, the blood in his house, CCTV mines, and Clay's own conduct convinced them they had enough, facing the weight of it all. And after consultation with his legal team, Clay finally broke. He offered a deal. He would plead guilty to Jackie's murder and reveal the location of her body in exchange for a reduced sentence. Jackie's family, desperate for closure and a proper burial, agreed. The sandbar grave. Clay led investigators to a remote sandbar on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. He was uncertain of the exact spot until he recalled burying Jackie beneath a bag of fertilizer. One officer, an avid gardener, explained that large amounts of fertilizer can kill trees. They scanned the area and noticed 3 dead trees. Beneath one, they began to dig. There, they found Jackie's body clothed in the same outfit she wore the day she disappeared. She was identified through dental records. At last, after 2 years of anguish, Jackie's family could lay her to rest. A funeral, a final goodbye. Her funeral was held on her parents' golden wedding anniversary, a day once meant for celebration, now forever marked by loss. Cheryl had to face the unimaginable task of telling Jackie's children that their mother was gone and their father had killed her. The revelation devastated them. In an instant, they lost both parents, one to murder, the other to prison. The children refused further contact with Clay. The man who had once lived under the same roof was now, in their eyes, a stranger responsible for destroying their world. A killer's confession. As part of the plea agreement, Clay was required to confess in full. He revealed that the thought of killing Jackie first entered his mind a year earlier, when she told him she was leaving for good. Justice deferred. The murder of Jackie Waller and the Amon family tragically. Waller claimed that he never intended to kill Jackie. He said he tried to suppress those dark thoughts out of respect for her as the mother of his children, but deep down, he couldn't accept the idea of her taking them away. According to Clay, he warned Jackie that doing so would have severe consequences. Warnings she'd in his view ignored, but his version of events quickly unraveled. The night before Jackie disappeared, Clay Waller drove to Devil's Island and dug a grave. He later said their divorce proceedings had been going relatively smoothly. On the day of Jackie's death, after their visit to the attorney's office, he claimed they talked and she allegedly suggested they be intimate one last time. They returned to his house, where, while looking for something to eat, Clay said, he accidentally struck Jackie, causing her nose to bleed. Furious, Jackie stormed into the hallway, smeared blood on the walls, and shouted that he would never see the kids again. That was the moment, Clay claimed, he snapped. He admitted to punching her, then strangling her to death. After the murder, he stuffed Jackie's body into a dumpster and transported her to the grave he had already prepared the night before. He returned, cleaned the car and the house, took a shower, changed his clothes, and then casually met his girlfriend and son at a toy store, behaving as if nothing had happened. The Iman family, faith, facade, and darkness too, outsiders. The Iman family seemed like a devout, tight-knit Christian household. They were regulars at the Norwood Portson Church every Sunday, and to the world, they projected an image of unity and holiness. But behind closed doors, their world was far from what it appeared. In 1983, William Bill Iman and Sandra met at church. He was 18. She was just 16. With their parents' blessing, they married young and settled in Logan, Ohio. Bill worked construction and played music for their evangelical church. Sandra stayed home. In 1984, they welcomed their only son, William Jr., affectionately called Will. Years later, at age 17, Will met 15-year-old Summer Cook ironically at church, just like his parents. They formed a close friendship that turned romantic. After 3 years together, they married when Summer turned 18 in 2004. The newlyweds moved into a small house near Will's parents. That same year, Bill Iman, now 39, began hosting prayer meetings in his garage. He envisioned himself as a spiritual guide, though the community viewed him as a self-declared minister with questionable credibility. Despite the skepticism, his garage gatherings began to attract attention. First neighbors, then friends, then strangers looking for healing and answers. People brought offerings, prayers, and hope. Faith meets financial crisis. By 2005, Will and Summer welcomed their first child, Alex, but financial difficulties loomed. Bill's spiritual mission brought no income to survive. The entire family decided to relocate to Florida for construction jobs. In Florida, things briefly stabilized. Both Bill and Will found work in hotel construction, while Sandra and Summer stayed home with the kids. But by 2008, they had returned to Ohio, having lost their home in Logan and settled into a rental in the countryside of Vinton County. That same year, Summer gave birth to their second child, Kelly, and in 2010, a third daughter, Alana, joined the family. Despite the growing number of mouths to feed, the young parents occasionally took weekend getaways. During those times, Bill and Sandra cared for their grandchildren, a role they cherished. A church, a scheme, a fallout. In the spring of 2010, Bill received his official pastor's license, claiming the title of head minister of the Sky of Faith Church. Alongside Sandra, he launched a charitable organization, the Ranch of Mercy, intended to house orphans and support the homeless. But dreams need money to fund the vision. Bill created a lottery. People could buy tickets with a chance to win a home or $200,000 in cash. There were 99 additional prizes. News outlets covered the story. Flyers went out. Donations came in. The Iman family, the vanishing of Summer, and the secrets of a so-called sanctuary to the community. The Ranch of Mercy project, spearheaded by the Iman family, seemed like a noble cause. For just $10 a ticket, participants were promised lavish prizes up to $200,000 or a brand new house, while also being told their money would help build a shelter for the homeless and orphaned. By all accounts, it was a spiritual mission rooted in generosity. But behind the sermons and salvation was a more troubling reality. Bill Iman successfully sold 100,000 tickets, amassing over $1 million. The house drawing was set for September 2010, but before that date arrived, a quiet storm was brewing in the Iman household. A cry for freedom. Summer's final journal in June 2010. Summer Iman, just 25, confided in her Janula raw, emotional letter to herself. I am utterly exhausted from trying to please everyone. Do I not deserve happiness? Do I not have the right to feel love and to love in return? I feel like a servant running around, following orders. I love my children deeply, but I don't want them to grow up watching their mother live like this. Every day is a battle. I just want to rest, cry, and sleep without fear. It was a clear sign. She wanted out of her marriage to William Will Iman Jr., the man she'd met at church and married at 18. Now, 6 years and 3 children later, she wanted to reclaim her life. Summer feared Will's reaction. Would he take the kids away? Would he become violent? She wasn't sure, but she knew she couldn't stay that summer. She left the Iman residence, taking their son Alex and daughters Kelly and Alana, along with her personal belongings. She moved into her parents' home and tried to maintain a respectful co-parenting dynamic, even allowing scheduled visits with their father and grandparents. New beginnings and brewing tensions. In August 2010, Summer started a new chapter. She began a relationship with Adam Peters, a man she trusted. She also found a job cleaning at a downtown bank in Logan, despite having limited formal education. Meanwhile, trouble was unfolding at the Ranch of Mercy, despite all the ticket sales. Construction on the prize home never began. No raffle took place in September or October, and no explanations were given. There were no refunds. By December 1st, 2010, the Iman family was evicted from their rented home for failing to pay rent. Summer and Adam went to collect her remaining belongings, but were blocked by Will and his parents. Summer called the police, reporting intimidation and harassment. The situation escalated. Will clashed with the responding officer and threatened Adam, resulting in a formal complaint. Summer reflected on her marriage, how idyllic it once seemed, but how controlling and oppressive it had become. Will dictated everything: what she ate, how she lived, even how she slept. She wasn't allowed to have a phone or keys. He monitored her every move. She revealed his obsession with polygamy, his use of disturbing websites, and his threats if she pursued divorce. Even their cats mysteriously disappeared. Will claimed they ran away, but she suspected otherwise. Will responded by saying he took her phone and keys out of suspicion of cheating. He admitted to taking the cats to a shelter due to their behavior. The court issued a restraining order against Will. He was put on probation. What followed was a bitter custody battle. The Iman family accused Adam Peters of being a danger to the children, while Summer fought to protect them. March 22nd, 2011. The night Summer disappeared, and the night of March 22nd, 2011, Summer had just finished her shift at the bank. It was late, around 11 p.m., when she took the trash outside to the alley. She had texted Adam to pick her up, but when he arrived at 11:30, she was gone. Instead, he found a chilling scene. Summer's jacket, keys, phone, and music player lay scattered near the dumpster. Her earbuds were still playing. Panicked, Adam called her parents. They tried the bank first, hoping she was still inside, but she wasn't. Then they called police. Logan officers arrived promptly. Eyewitnesses soon came forward. 3 people had seen something disturbing. 2 women, out for a late night jog, said they saw Summer near the dumpster just before a white Ford Crown Victoria pulled up, driven by a blonde woman. 2 figures dressed in black clothing exited the car and grabbed Summer. She screamed, but within seconds, she was shoved into the vehicle, which sped away into the night of the abduction, and the family that wouldn't talk around. 11 p.m. on March 22nd, 2011. Summer Inman stepped outside her workplace in downtown Logan, Ohio, to dispose of the trash. Moments later, a white Ford Crown Victoria pulled into the alley. 2 individuals wearing black clothing and balaclavas emerged from the car and grabbed Summer, dragging her toward the vehicle. She screamed and struggled, fighting to escape. A bystander who witnessed the attack tried to intervene, but the blonde woman behind the wheel sprayed him with pepper spray, forcing him to back off. Within seconds, the car sped off with Summer in the back seat. Two women jogging nearby saw the entire scene unfold and ran straight to the nearest police station, desperate to report what they had just witnessed. But their account at first was met with skepticism. Authorities found the scenario too outlandish, like something from a movie. They feared it might be a hoax. Nevertheless, by the time police reached the Allege 1 hour after, Summer's parents had officially filed the missing persons report. She was already gone, a town united, a hope fading as news of Summer's abduction spread. It shocked the quiet community of Logan. Within hours, the story hit local media outlets and ignited an outpouring of support. Hundreds of volunteers joined search parties. Posters went up, social media flooded with pleas. But as each day passed, the chance of finding her alive began to shrink. Her parents clung to hope, even as dread crept in. Just days before the abduction, Summer had posted a photo on Facebook, candid moment, showing her with her new partner, Adam Peters, and her 3 young children. They looked happy, safe. Content, oddly enough, Will Inman, her estranged husband, was still friends with Adam on Facebook. Why a man would remain friends with his wife's new partner raised questions, but the backstory added further complexity. The web titans around the Inman family. Adam Peters had once been hired by the Inman family in 2010 for household work. It was during that time that Summer and Adam met. Their connection was immediate, though Summer initially resisted it. She was still married, still trying to hold things together, but over time, that bond deepened. She documented her inner turmoil in her diary. Her love for Adam wasn't just romantic, it symbolized freedom, a life beyond control. Following their early morning visit to the car wash, Summer Inman was nowhere to be seen. That same day, Bill, Sandra, and Will Inman drove to a tire shop in Cleveland, allegedly to swap out the vehicle's tires. But their behavior raised eyebrows. A mechanic at the shop noted something odd. Bill insisted on replacing nearly new tires with used ones, offering no practical reason. Even more suspiciously, the police-style spotlight once mounted beside the driver's side mirror had been removed. It was a small but telling sign. Someone was trying to alter the car's appearance, to erase its identity. The truth comes crashing down. Eventually, investigators had enough. All 3 Inmans were taken into custody and brought in for questioning. Before his arrest, Bill reassured his elderly mother that this was all a misunderstanding, a test from the devil. But behind closed doors, under the bright lights of the interrogation room, their narrative began to crumble. At first, all 3 insisted on their innocence. They denied any knowledge of Summer's abduction, let alone her whereabouts. But as hours passed and the reality of facing the death penalty set in, the pressure cracked Sandra Inman's composure. She finally broke. Sandra's confession, from intimidation to tragedy. Sandra admitted to everything. She confessed that she, Bill, and Will were all involved in Summer's abduction on the night of March 22, 2011. According to Sandra, the plan was not to kill Summer, but to scare her into complying with custody arrangements. Bill and Will had donned black masks, and she herself drove the white Ford Crown Victoria. The idea, Sandra claimed, was simply to intimidate Summer into agreeing to visitation with the grandchildren. But the situation spiraled out of control. She explained how, after forcing Summer into the back seat, Will used plastic ties to bind her neck, wrists, and ankles. It was meant to be temporary restraint, just long enough to frighten her. But Summer began to lose consciousness. Will panicked, desperately searching the car for a knife to cut her free, shouting frantically to his mother. But by then, it was too late. Sandra wept as she recalled the scene. She maintained the family never intended for things to end in death. But now, there was no undoing what had happened. The final resting place. A church-turned-burial ground on March 29th, 2011. A week after Summer vanished, Sandra led detectives to her final resting place, a septic tank on the grounds of the Skyview Faith Church, located near Nelsonville, about 30 kilometers from Logan. This wasn't just any location, it was the church Bill had helped build. It was where he and Sandra had been married 28 years earlier, a place once symbolic of unity, now a hideous contradiction. Officers pried open the heavy metal lid beneath a concrete slab. Summer's legs were the first thing they saw, her body stuffed headfirst into the tank, still dressed in her black t-shirt from work. The shirt bore a painfully ironic message: "I don't have anger issues, I have issues with idiots." A forensic examination confirmed strangulation as the cause of death. No major trauma was found, apart from the ligature marks on her neck, wrists, and ankles. Sandra admitted she had originally planned to dump the body into a river, but worried it would be discovered too soon. Instead, she chose the septic tank by the church, believing it would keep Summer hidden indefinitely. Just as a mother's sorrow, Sandra's guilt weighed heavily on her. She expressed deep shame and regret, claiming she saw Summer as a daughter. Her confession was not just a legal admission, it was an emotional collapse. She broke down in tears during sentencing, facing Summer's grieving parents, begging for forgiveness. She was the only inmate to accept responsibility. Bill and Will, by contrast, showed no remorse. They remained mostly silent during trial, eyes cast down, avoiding any glance at Summer's parents. They never acknowledged their role in her death. Verdict and consequences. In 2012, the court delivered its verdict. Bill Inman, age 49, and Will Inman, age 28, were convicted of aggravated murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sandra Inman, age 47, received a lesser sentence due to her cooperation. She was sentenced to 15 years to life. The courtroom was filled with tension and grief, but there was finally resolution. Summer's family could now bury her, knowing the truth. Her children Alex, Kelly, and Alano were left to grow up without their mother and without their father or grandparents. Sandra's final words still echo in many minds: "I wanted to fix it, but it was already too late." A mother vanishes. The disappearance of Jessica Hiringotho, Sandra Inman, was ultimately sentenced to life in prison, with eligibility for parole after 15 years. Many who knew the family were unconvinced by her confession. Friends and fellow churchgoers speculated that she had taken the falla, strategic move to lessen the legal consequences for her husband, Bill, and their son Will. In their eyes, Bill had always been the dominant figure in the household, making all final decisions. Will, by contrast, was seen as the spoiled, coddled son, whose every whim was indulged. Today, Alex and Alana, Summer's two youngest children, are being raised by her side of the family. For a long time, it was difficult to explain to them why their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather had all disappeared at once. A new case, Jessica Hiringame, 2013. Another young woman's story gripped the state of Michigan, a case that would haunt the community for years. Jessica Hiringa, a 25-year-old gas station clerk, vanished under eerie and sudden circumstances during her night shift. The search for her would expose a far more terrifying truth. Her abduction was not an isolated event. When police finally caught her kidnapper, was by chance they uncovered disturbing evidence of other victims. Jessica was born on July 16, 1987, and lived in Norton Shores, a quiet community near Lake Michigan. She came from a modest family and had one sister. At age 22, she became a mother to a son, Zen, fathered by her longtime boyfriend, Dakota Quayle Dyer, though they were still together in 2013 and lived in a rented home. Their relationship had grown strained. Financial hardships put pressure on the couple, leading to frequent arguments and postponed wedding plans. Jessica worked long hours at the local Exxon gas station, known for her warm personality and reliability. She often volunteered for extra shifts to support her young son. A diary, a dream, and a desperate reality. Jessica dreamed of becoming an accountant. Her diary entries revealed a woman full of ambition, hope, and the desire for something better. She wanted to go to college, learn, and build a future, but money was tight, and Dakota wasn't always able to contribute consistently. Despite the difficulties, Jessica remained determined. She clung to the dream of building a good life for her child. April 26, 2013, the night Jessica disappeared, that Friday. Jessica's day began with a stop at a nearby store. Around 3 p.m., she arrived at the Exxon gas station just after 4:35 p.m., ready for her night shift. It was supposed to end at 11:30 p.m., but Jessica would never clock out. She was working alone. As usual, at 11:14 p.m., a customer called 911. His voice was calm but concerned. "I'm not sure what's going on. The station is open. Lights are on. The door is unlocked. But there's no one here. No cashier. It's just my car and another one parked outside. It's really strange." Police arrived at the station within 10 minutes of the call. Inside, everything seemed undisturbed. Jessica's purse, with $400 in cash, was sitting in the back office. Her coat was there too, along with her house and car keys. Her locked vehicle was still parked outside. The only signs of something amiss were a single drop of blood near the back door, later confirmed to be Jessica's, and a few strange items on the floor. The cap to a Walther P22 pistol's laser sight, and to watch batteries. The cash register was untouched. The last recorded sale of lighter was at 10:52 p.m., oddly. Jessica's pack of cigarettes was still sitting near the counter, suggesting she had stepped away from her register only briefly, possibly to help someone outside, but she never came back. Immediate response and no answers. Authorities quickly contacted the gas station's owner, who sent another manager to secure the site. Jessica's family was notified soon after. Panic set in. Her parents called friends, searched the area, and even retraced her last known movements. One friend remembered being at the station between 8 o'clock and 9 p.m. and said nothing seemed unusual. Jessica had been her usual self, smiling, working, chatting. But now, she was gone. A vanishing witness. Jessica Haringas. Last hours, shortly after the initial search began, a colleague of Jessica Haringas arrived at the Exxon station to secure the building for the night. She brought with her a disturbing new piece of the puzzle. Around 11 p.m., she and her boyfriend had passed by the station on a motorcycle and noticed something strange. A silver Chrysler Town and Country minivan was parked near the rear service door. Its back hatch open. Near the van stood a man with disheveled, wavy hair, wearing an orange sweatshirt. He appeared agitated, repeatedly opening and closing the van's back door. The couple, unsure of what was happening, lingered for a moment, suspecting Jessica might be stealing or unloading something from the store. But before they could learn more, the van sped away. When investigators reviewed footage from nearby security cameras, one showed a silver Chrysler minivan driving past the station at 11:02 p.m., just minutes before Jessica was reported missing. Called his wife and had a 50-minute conversation with her before returning home. A polygraph test and his wife's statement verified his story. He too was ruled out. Another name that surfaced was Rob Fillet, the brother of the Exxon station's manager. He told detectives he had stopped by the station around 9 p.m. and found Jessica looking downcast. She had confided in him that she was having family issues. Rob offered her a place to stay, but she politely declined. He then made a purchase and left for a night fishing trip, later confirmed by phone records. Rob was eliminated as well. No sign of Jessica despite extensive search and rescue efforts, using helicopters, cadaver dogs, and search teams combing Lake Michigan, nearby woodlands, and local businesses, investigators came up empty. The case had hit a devastating standstill. A pattern begins to emerge, almost a year later. In February 2014, another chilling event occurred in Michigan. A small, blonde, bespectacled woman was walking home alone at night when she was suddenly attacked, kidnapped, and held captive by a man in an apartment. He assaulted and threatened her, but she was eventually released. The suspect in that case was 42-year-old Brad Mason. When police tracked him down, he brandished a fake gun, prompting officers to fatally shoot him. Mason had a disturbing criminal record. He was previously convicted of kidnapping in 2004 and had a 2011 indecent exposure charge. He lived just across from the Exxon station where Jessica had vanished. But despite proximity and a history of predatory behavior, investigators could find no direct link between Mason and Jessica Haringa. The van escapes again 2 years later. In 2016, another young woman was walking home late from a party. Disoriented, she was approached by a man in a silver minivan. He asked if she was okay and offered a ride. She declined, asking only to borrow his phone. The man agreed, but only if she got inside the van. Once inside, he locked the doors, showed her a gun, and told her to stay quiet. As he drove, the woman began to feel nauseous. She asked for fresh air. When he lowered the window, she seized her chance, leaping out of the moving vehicle and running to the nearest house. The van sped away. A break in the case. The victim's detailed description allowed police to identify the van from surveillance footage and license plate data. It belonged to 46-year-old Jeffrey Willis, a factory worker living a quiet life with no prior criminal record. When police searched his silver Chrysler Town and Country minivan, they found something chilling: a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol, the same type as the laser sight cap found at the Exxon station, where Jessica disappeared. The gun was traced to one of Willis's co-workers, who had reported it stolen. Willis was arrested and taken into custody. The hidden world of Jeffrey Willis's search of Willis's home revealed even more disturbing items. A locked box containing BDSM restraints, including handcuffs, ropes, gags, and chains, alongside a video camera, a vibrator, and a bullet matching the Walther P22. It was clear Jeffrey Willis had secrets far darker than anyone could have imagined. The dark mind of Jeffrey Willis. The search of Jeffrey Willis's home uncovered items that painted a profoundly disturbing portrait. Hidden among his possessions were insulin syringes filled with an unidentified liquid, suspected sedatives, Viagra, lubricants, disposable gloves, and a medical diagram of a female body marked with specific injection sites. Even more chilling was the content on his computer. Investigators found videos simulating kidnappings, most involving young women, as victims. In a concealed hard drive, tucked into an air vent, authorities discovered secret footage Willis had filmed of female neighbors swimming, entirely without their knowledge. On that same computer was a folder titled Victims. Inside were two. One bore the name of Jessica Haringa, the 25-year-old missing gas station clerk. The other, a woman named Rebecca Blech. Rebecca Blech, the forgotten victim. Rebecca Blech, aged 36, had vanished on June 29, 2014, just a year after Jessica disappeared. She had gone out for an evening run, but never made it home. Neighbors found her lying on a roadside, her clothing disheveled, unconscious but still clinging to life. She died before help could arrive. At first, authorities believed she had been struck by a vehicle, but an autopsy revealed the real horror. Rebecca had been shot 3 times, once in the head, twice in the back. There were also bruises on her wrists and legs, suggesting she had fought back. At the time, her killer remained unidentified. But 2 years later, after Willis's arrest, forensic testing linked her murder to the Walther P22 pistol found in his minivan. DNA found on a discarded glove in his home matched Rebecca's. Though Jeffrey Willis denied involvement, prosecutors believed he had attempted to abduct her. When Rebecca resisted, they theorized, he shot her and fled. Willis was convicted of Rebecca Bletch's murder and sentenced to life in prison. Jessica Haringa, still missing, but not forgotten while serving his life sentence. Jeffrey Willis was charged again, this time for the abduction and murder of Jessica Haringa. Despite her body never being found, Willis remained defiant. He denied all allegations, claiming he had never been near the Exxon station the night Jessica vanished, but the evidence told a different story. Phone records placed Willis at the Exxon station on April 26, 2013, the night Jessica disappeared. After that, he traveled to a home once belonging to his deceased grandfather, just 13 minutes away. When investigators arrived, they found the residence heavily fortified, and in the basement, they discovered bleaches, powders, and industrial cleaning supplies, all purchased in early 2013. The time of Jessica's disappearance, co-workers remembered that Willis had not shown up to work the following day, April 27th, when he finally returned. They noticed he had deep scratches on his face and hands. The last witness in 2016, a woman, came forward after seeing the news. She had visited the Exxon station the night before Jessica vanished. She recalled feeling uneasy about being alone at such a late hour. Jessica had seemed anxious, too visibly nervous. A man, who was already inside the store, tried to comfort the woman, saying, "Don't worry, she has customers who look out for her." That man was Jeffrey Willis. The witness remained outside, in her car, until Jessica finished her shift and drove away safely. Tragically, Jessica disappeared the very next night. A family connection. Kevin Blum's investigators continued building their case. They turned their attention to Kevin Blum, Willis's cousin and a 48-year-old corrections officer. Under pressure during questioning, Blum began to crack. He eventually confessed, revealing details about Rebecca Bletch's murder that had never been made public. More shockingly, he admitted to helping Jeffrey dispose of Jessica Haringa's body. Blum stated that on April 27th, the day after Jessica was abducted, Willis invited him to his grandfather's home. When Blum arrived, he found Jessica's lifeless body bound and lying on the floor. The two men wrapped her in a sheet, placed her in a vehicle, and drove to a remote forest where Jeffrey had already dug a grave. They buried her there and returned home. Blum later attempted to lead police to the burial site, but after hours of searching, he was unable to pinpoint the exact location. Trial and conviction, despite Jessica's remains never being recovered. Prosecutors pushed forward with their case. They alleged that Willis had stalked Jessica, knowing her routine and planning her abduction meticulously. On the night of April 26th, they claimed he parked near the rear service door, entered the station, and struck Jessica with his pistol, causing her to bleed. The cap from the pistol's laser sight was found on the floor, along with a small drop of blood. Willis then dragged her to his van and transported her to the same grandfather's home, where prosecutors allege he sexually assaulted and killed her. On his computer, investigators found files documenting news reports, photos, and articles about Jessica's disappearance. His password included her initials and the date, April 27th, 2013, the day she was presumed to have died. Willis's lawyers claimed the case was built on circumstantial evidence. They argued that no DNA, no body, and no surveillance footage directly proved he killed Jessica. They even floated alternative theories, suggesting her disappearance could be tied to drug trafficking or other criminal elements, citing statements from Jessica's fiancé about a potential substance abuse issue. But the jury wasn't convinced. Justice for Jessica. 2018. Jeffrey Willis was convicted of Jessica Haringa's kidnapping and murder. He was sentenced to a second life sentence without the possibility of parole. Though Jessica's body has never been found, her family and the public finally received some measure of closure, and Willis, a man once seen as quiet and harmless, was exposed as a predator hiding in plain sight with an obsession for control, cruelty, and domination that spanned years. and cost at least 2 women their lives. The final sentence. The disappearance of Jessica Hearing got convicted of the kidnapping and murder of Jessica Heeringa. Jeffrey Willis was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Throughout the trial, he remained cold and detached, showing no hint of remorse or empathy. Their tireless efforts helped pass new state legislation requiring all gas stations operating overnight to install surveillance cameras, a simple but powerful measurement to save lives where none were saved before. The tragedy at Xingyu, the girl who dared to shine. Humans are inherently skeptical. When confronted with near perfection, they search for flaws, and in their envious, no flaws are found, they create them. Our next story unfolds under the warm glow of prestige and promise. Yet, behind the applause and elegance, a rising star was quietly collapsing at the esteemed Xingyu University, often referred to as the Harvard of China. Prestigious performance was underway, in collaboration with the Beijing Symphony Orchestra. The university hosted a major cultural event inside its magnificent theater. Elegant pairs filled the venue, men in tailored suits, women in flowing gowns, murmuring greetings and exchanging polite smiles as they found their seats. Among the featured performers that night was a prodigy, Ru Lingling, a gifted student set to deliver a 6-minute solo on the gukinen, ancient Chinese instrument revered for its history, intellect, and sophistication. It was an opportunity that could define her career. The stakes were enormous. Professors, future employers, even elite patrons of the arts were in the audience. For Ru Lingling, there was no room for error, a performance etched in pain behind the scenes. However, Ru Lingling had been unraveling. The pressure of perfection had taken its toll. For 3 days leading up to the concert, she could barely eat. Stomach pains, sleepless nights, and a sense of blurred reality followed her everywhere. Friends tried to reassure her, but they too were nervous, knowing how much she had endured to get here. When Ru Lingling finally stepped onto the stage, her poise was breathtaking as she played the guqin. Her performance transcended sound. It became emotional catharsis. Some audience members were moved to tears. When the final note echoed into silence, thunderous applause filled the hall. Lingling bowed deeply, offered a small, exhausted smile, left the stage, unaware that her closest friend in the crowd was clapping so hard. Her hands had turned red, but even she wore an expression tinged with unease. The unraveling, a star falls that night. Instead of celebrating, Ru Lingling chose to return home. The emotional release had left her utterly drained. While showering, she ran her hand through her hair and something was wrong. Strands of hair came out in clumps. Her heart raced. She leaped from the shower, pulled back the curtain, and stared into the mirror. There, she saw bald patches forming on her scalp, irregular, as if shaved by mistake. But this was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, her condition deteriorated rapidly. Soon, she was confined to a wheelchair, unable to speak or move. Her brilliant mind faded. She regressed cognitively to the level of a sick child. What happened to Ru Lingling was not a natural illness, nor a genetic disorder. This was something done to her. The price of perfection for many students. It is harder to get into Xingyu University than Harvard itself. The domestic acceptance rate is less than 0.4%, reserved for the best of the best. It is a place where the children of billionaires, ministers, and top scholars come to learn. It operates on an annual budget of $5 billion. At Xingyu, brilliance is expected. Pressure is woven into the air. And in that atmosphere, Ru Lingling, once a girl who dared to shine, was crushed by forces we still don't fully understand. The cost of excellence, the silent fall of Ru Lingling. Chapter 2. Behind the prestige at Xingyu University. The real battle doesn't end with gaining admission. The true test begins afterwards, surviving the unforgiving pressures of its elite environment. Some alumni, reflecting candidly, have confessed to behaviors they once thought unimaginable. Betrayal, Manipulation, sabotage driven, not by malice, but by a desperate need to stay ahead. In 1994, among a group of 31 chemistry undergraduates, one name rose above the rest, Ru Lingling, with 20 men and 11 women in her cohort. Lingling stood out not just for her intellect, ranking consistently in the top 3, but for her radiant confidence and striking beauty. Professors saw in her the makings of a future scholar or scientist, of global acclaim. To her peers, she was the embodiment of perfection, charming, approachable, and tireless. She floated from lecture halls to labs with grace, her energy seemingly boundless, her reputation unblemished. But behind the glittering image, something deeply disturbing was beginning to take shape. Chapter 3: A Descent Without Cause. In the early weeks of her decline, the changes were subtle. Lingling began showing up late to class. Her eyes looked heavy, as though weighed down by sleepless nights. She seemed dazed and unable to focus, often sweating heavily as if she were feverish. She complained of crippling stomach pain, leading some to suspect stress-induced ulcers. The school clinic prescribed her mild medication, but it offered little relief. Soon, her late arrivals became full absences. Her friends, increasingly concerned, visited her dormitory one evening. What they found shook them. Lingling was curled up in bed, shivering in agony. Scattered around her pillow were clumps of dark hair. She dismissed their alarm, saying it was just exhaustion, and promising she'd be back to class soon. But the truth was more harrowing. Her skin had turned an ashen gray. Her lips, once vibrant, were now tinged with purple. She moved slowly, wincing in pain with every step. Most of her hair was gone, hidden beneath scarves or hats she wore to conceal the dramatic loss. Occasionally, her vision would fail entirely, leaving her temporarily blind. Her condition defied explanation, fueling rumors across campus. Chapter 4: Whispers and suspicions. Speculation ran rampant. Some students whispered about autoimmune disorders, others feared cancer or alopecia. But more ominous theories took hold. Some pointed to a recent rift between Lingling and a close friend named Sunny. Just before her health spiraled, Ru Lingling had missed a crucial orchestra rehearsal. According to witnesses, Sunny told the instructor that Ru skipped it out of arrogance. She was too advanced for the others and didn't need the practice. Those who knew Lingling well dismissed the accusation, but others began to wonder if this falling out, this perceived betrayal, was more than just a clash of pride. Some even began to whisper about sabotage. Ru Lingling was, after all, a top chemistry student. Was it possible that someone had used her own field of study against her? Chapter 5: A Friend's Horror. One friend, Beijing Anne, a peer from her hometown and fellow university student, decided to visit Lingling in the hospital. He arrived with a fruit basket, expecting to see a tired but recovering classmate. What greeted him instead was a vision that would haunt him forever. Lingling lay on the hospital bed, nearly bald, her body trembling, and her face contorted by a partial facial paralysis. She was hooked up to machines, tubes running from her nose and mouth. Her skin looked scorched from within, too sensitive for even the gentle touch of her gown. The sight was too much. Beijing turned and fled the room, not from fear of illness, but from heartbreak. What could reduce a gifted, vibrant 20-year-old to this? What cruelty had stolen her brilliance so completely? Chapter 6: A Medical Mystery. Doctors were mystified. Her rapid deterioration defied diagnosis. Just weeks earlier, she had been in perfect health. That Ru Lingling's ordeal began with intermittent stomach cramps, escalating to convulsions that left her writhing in pain. She began consuming large quantities of Chinese herbal teas to self-medicate, but the symptoms only worsened. Soon, she was collapsing from pain, unable to attend class or move unassisted. Vision loss followed, then the horrifying hair loss. Finally, she was hospitalized just days before Christmas. Her family stood by helplessly, watching as she transformed from a top scholar into a barely conscious patient. Tests were run: arsenic, mercury, but all came back negative. Then a breakthrough suggestion came from a retired doctor at another hospital. The symptoms, he noted, were eerily consistent with thallium poisoning, rare, highly toxic substance, used in rodenticides, and historically in espionage. When asked, Zhu Lingling insisted she had never worked with thallium. The hospital contacted Tsinghua University to investigate which chemicals she had accessed, but her lab records showed no exposure to any known sources of thallium. If thallium was indeed the cause, how had it entered her system, and more chillingly, who had introduced it? The cost of envy, the poisoning of Zhu Lingling. Chapter 7. A fragile recovery. After weeks of debilitating illness, Zhu Lingling's condition suddenly appeared to improve. By mid-January, she was able to walk again, speak with some clarity, and even expressed a strong desire to return to her studies. She pleaded with her parents for permission to sit her exams, anxious not to lose an entire academic semester. Her parents, however, were deeply opposed. They feared the stress of university life had triggered her mysterious breakdown. But Zhu Lingling, determined and persuasive, feigned recovery and resumed classes in February. Her return was brief. By March, her health once again deteriorated, this time catastrophically. She was readmitted to the hospital, barely able to speak. Her body weakened to the point where continuing her education was no longer feasible. Armed with the thallium theory, Beijing and Lingling's parents approached her doctors again. The response was sobering, while the diagnosis made sense. The doctors remained cautious. Thallium is exceptionally rare and hard to obtain, confirming its presence required specialized blood testing. Samples would need to be shipped to labs capable of detecting the element. Even worse, the doctors warned that if thallium was the culprit, Lingling may have already passed the point of no return. The antidote Prussian blue was only effective in the early stages of poisoning. As the gravity of this revelation settled in, the question emerged: who would want to do this to Zhu Lingling, and how had they delivered the poison? One theory proposed that her parents, both prominent engineers, might have been the true targets. Her father worked for a national defense agency, her mother at a high-level industrial firm. But this theory led nowhere. No one else at Tsinghua exhibited similar symptoms that ruled out exposure via air or water. Zhu Lingling had been targeted individually. Chapter 10. A thief in the dormitory. Then, an even more disturbing development. During Lingling's hospitalization, her personal belongings were stolen from her dorm. Gone were her shampoo, bath soap, water glass, contact lens case, even her lipstick. The thief hadn't taken valuables, only items that came into direct contact with her body. This wasn't random. It was intentional. The theft triggered a full-blown investigation. Tsinghua's dormitories are gender-restricted. Only current female students had access to Lingling's building. Professors, graduate students, and male undergrads were barred from entry. With no surveillance cameras on campus at the time, tracking the culprit would take old-fashioned detective work. Police began examining thallium suppliers across China. Though banned for public use, a handful of industrial labs and academic institutions still had controlled access to it. One supplier had sold thallium compounds to Tsinghua University's chemistry department for use in optical experiments. Records showed that only a small group had clearance to handle the substance. To professors, 3 graduate students, and 2 senior undergrads. The professors and male graduate students were immediately ruled out. That left 2 potential suspects. One male senior chemistry student, excluded due to dormitory access restrictions. One female senior chemistry student, who had access both to the lab and the women's dormitory. She was also Zhu Lingling's roommate. Her name was Sun Wei, known on campus as Sunny. Chapter 11. Envy. With a motive, the revelation stunned the campus community. Sunny had been Lingling's closest friend, her roommate, and fellow chemistry student. But now, she was the prime suspect in a case of deliberate, prolonged and potentially fatal poisoning. Those who knew both girls recalled growing tension between them in the recent student elections. Lingling had defeated Sunny, taking the spotlight for herself. Sunny, by all accounts, didn't take the loss gracefully. She was known to be argumentative, prone to jealousy, and according to some peers, had lied to professors and friends in the past to elevate her status. That is, Lingling soared academically and artistically, including a standout performance at the Beijing Philharmonic. Sunny's resentment grew darker, but the question remained. Could professional jealousy lead someone to such a horrific act? The poison was traced back to a lab compound Sunny had access to. The personal items had been taken from a room she shared, and no one else had the means, the motive, or the opportunity. Investigators had found their suspect. Chapter 12. Justice denied. Lingling's decline had devastated not only her family, but an entire nation that watched helplessly. Beautiful, brilliant, and once full of promise, she had become a ghost of herself. Doctors eventually confirmed what the internet community had suspected: thallium poisoning had ravaged her body. But by the time the diagnosis came, it was far too late. The levels of thallium in her blood were alarmingly high, and the antidote, Prussian blue, was ineffective at such an advanced stage. The damage was irreversible. Lingling would never walk, speak, or think the way she once did. She was left permanently disabled, confined to a wheelchair, suffering from facial paralysis, and with the mental capacity of a 6-year-old. Even more devastating, the person who most likely poisoned her roommate and former best friend, Sun Wei, known as Sunny, was never officially charged. Despite being the only female with access to both the thallium lab and the women's dormitory, and despite her escalating jealousy and clear motive, Sunny maintained her innocence. After an 8-hour interrogation, her politically connected family intervened. Sunny's father held a prominent role in the Democratic Revolutionary Committee. Her grandfather had once served as a vice chairman in the Chinese government. Her relatives held posts at top universities and state institutions. Before long, the case stalled. Sunny legally changed her name and birth date, married an American citizen, and emigrated to the United States, where she began a new life and untouched by the horrors she may have inflicted. Meanwhile, Lingling's parents fought for justice. In the end, the hospital compensated them with a mere $14,000, a paltry sum for the misdiagnosis, mishandling, and the tragic loss of their daughter's future. To make matters worse, when police officially closed the case, they didn't even notify her family. Lingling lived until the age of 50 in her diminished state. Her parents found what little comfort they could in the fact that she lived for so long, even as her body and mind were never fully her own again. The individual responsible was never held accountable. Chapter 1. The Vanishing of Paige Berg. June 28, 2007. The discovery of a burning red Ford Focus in a remote area of Mesa County, Colorado, marked the beginning of another haunting mystery. The vehicle belonged to Paige Bergfeld, a loving mother of 3. The car was found fully engulfed in flames, yet the surrounding brush remained untouched. Authorities quickly ruled it an intentional fire, staged to cover up something far more sinister. That same day, Paige failed to pick up her children from a family friend, Carol Linderholma. Highly unusual lapse for someone known for her reliability. Her 8-year-old son, Jazz, was the first to notice something was terribly wrong. Unable to reach his mother, Jazz urged Carol to take him to the local police station, where he reported that Paige had vanished. What followed was a massive public search effort. Friends, neighbors, police, and volunteers combed Grand Junction and its surroundings, desperate to find any trace of her. One thing became clear: Paige Bergfeld didn't just disappear, she was taken. Chapter 2. A complicated past. Paige's life, at first glance, was one of normalcy and devotion. She had been married twice. Her first husband, Howard Bigler, was someone she met during her time at the University of Florida, where she pursued nursing, though their relationship eventually ended over disagreements about starting a family. The two had remained on good terms. Her second marriage, to Rob Dixon, also ended in divorce. After separating from Rob, Paige reconnected with Howard. The two rekindled a close friendship, perhaps even more. Howard claimed to be one of the last people to see Paige alive. On June 28th, they had spent the day together in Eagle County on personal matters, after which they parted ways. Howard told police they kept in touch via phone even after their meeting. When he learned of her disappearance, he immediately called 911, expressing fear that something terrible had happened. The police, naturally, turned their attention to Paige's romantic relationships and her past. But there was more to Paige's life than met the eye. Chapter 3. The Secret Life. When investigators first spoke with Paige Bergfeld's ex-husband, Howard Bigler, he confirmed they had met in Eagle County on the day she vanished, June 28, 2007. He told detectives they had stayed in touch after their meeting, and phone records verified his location that night. Cell tower data placed him hundreds of miles away, in Denver, ruling him out as a suspect. With Howard cleared, the focus shifted to Paige's second husband, Rob Dixon, a man whose past held troubling secrets. Chapter 4. A History of Violence. Paige had met Rob at a Denver strip club shortly after her first divorce. Rob, a wealthy man with a large family inheritance, was charming and persuasive. They married in 1998, settling into a lavish home in Colorado. In the years that followed, they had 3 children, the center of Paige's world. For a time there, life looked picture perfect. Paige was a devoted mother, Rob a successful businessman, but behind closed doors, their marriage began to unravel. Financial strain hit hard. After Rob's businesses suffered losses, eventually, he filed for bankruptcy, and the stress fractured their once stable home. In 2004, tensions boiled over. Paige called 911, reporting that Rob had threatened to kill her and their children. When police arrived, the couple insisted they had worked things out. But just a year later, another incident occurred, one that couldn't be brushed aside. Paige alleged that Rob had struck her while she was holding their youngest child. He was arrested and charged with third-degree assault, eventually pleading guilty to molestation, though he avoided jail time. Following their separation, Rob moved to Pennsylvania. Despite the violent past, he returned to Colorado after Paige's disappearance to assist in search efforts. Investigators verified his alibi, but remained cautious. Every possibility had to be examined. Chapter 5. The Car. The clues. The burning trail. Forensic experts examined Paige's scorched Ford Focus, hoping to find clues the fire hadn't destroyed. They quickly noticed something peculiar. The driver's seat was pushed all the way back, indicating a tall person had last driven the vehicle. Paige, being petite, wouldn't have been able to reach the pedals from that position. In the trunk, detectives found Paige's notebook, but several pages were torn out, specifically entries between June 26th and June 29th. Days later, a motorist dealing with a flat tire along a rural highway noticed a checkbook lying on the side of the road. Police searched the area and recovered multiple items belonging to Paige: insurance documents, medical records, and personal effects. Most notably, they found a business card that changed the course of the investigation. Chapter 6. Dual Lives. The business card was the first hint that Paige Bergfeld had been living a double life, one that no one, not even her closest friends or family, knew about. In addition to being a dance teacher, entrepreneur, and active parent, Paige had been working as an escort under an alias. Investigators discovered a second phone in her car, used exclusively for her private clients. This second phone opened a door to a hidden world, filled with coded messages, encrypted appointments, and a list of clients, one of whom may have wanted her dead. Why would a devoted mother and successful businesswoman take such a risk? Was it financial pressure? A desire to maintain her independence? Or something else entirely? Now, detectives weren't just searching for a missing woman, they were unraveling the secret life she had carefully kept hidden. Chapter 7. Lester, Ralph, Jones, using the second phone. Investigators compiled a list of names and calls made in the hours before Page disappeared. One name stood out. Lester Ralph? Jones had a criminal record including kidnapping and domestic violence and had served 5 years in prison for previous offenses. But that wasn't all. Jones also owned a white vehicle, eerily similar to the one described by Page's friend, Carol Linderholm. Carol had told detectives about an unnerving encounter. One day, as Page was leaving her house, she noticed a white car blocking her driveway. Frustrated, Page tried to squeeze past, accidentally bumping into the vehicle. The driver, instead of getting out, fled the scene immediately. When police dug deeper, they discovered Jones had attempted to book an appointment with Page the day before her disappearance. When questioned, Jones denied knowing her, but the evidence kept piling up. During a search of his property, investigators found a number of suspicious items. A burner, phone, several men's wigs, a sheet of paper with escort service numbers, personal effects that hinted at a fixation with Page. The connection was growing stronger, and so was the likelihood that Lester Jones wasn't just a curious client, but a dangerous predator. Chapter 8. The phone, the lies, and the lingerie. When investigators searched Lester Ralph Jones' home, they uncovered a disturbing array of evidence: women's lingerie in various sizes, a burner phone, and contact information tied to escort services. The disposable phone, in particular, became a cornerstone in the case. Call records showed that on the night Page vanished, someone had made multiple calls to her from an unregistered number. When questioned, Jones denied ever owning a second phone, but that was a lie. Detectives traced the burner phone to a supermarket on North Avenue. Surveillance footage clearly showed Lester Jones purchasing the device. When confronted with the video, he refused to acknowledge that the man in it was him. Though Jones had not yet been arrested, the evidence was stacking against him. With no body and no eyewitness, the district attorney hesitated to file charges. The case stalled, and Page's loved ones were left in a tormenting limbo. Years passed, hope faded, but then, in 2012, everything changed. Chapter 9. A body in the Ravenna, Delta County, not far from where Page's personal items had been. Found 5 years earlier, a hiker stumbled upon skeletal remains hidden among brush and rocks near a ravine. Authorities rushed to the scene. DNA testing confirmed the worst. It was Page Bergfeld. Due to the body's condition, the exact cause of death couldn't be determined, but several facial bones had been shattered, leading forensic experts to conclude that she had died from blunt force trauma, beaten to death and left to decompose in silence. The discovery confirmed what her family had feared all along, and reignited the investigation with a grim clarity. Chapter 10. The Trial of Lester Ralph Jones. In November 2014, Lester Jones was formally charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and kidnapping. But it wasn't until July 2016, almost a decade after Page vanished, that the trial finally began. The proceedings lasted 22 days. Prosecutors painted a harrowing picture. Lester Jones, already convicted in a past case for kidnapping and threatening his ex-wife at gunpoint, had tried to book an appointment with Page and became enraged when she didn't respond. One of the most powerful moments came from Lester's ex-wife, Lisa, who testified against him. She recalled how, in the late 1990s, Lester had abducted her, held her at gunpoint, and terrorized her with threats of death. Her then-boyfriend was later found shot in the head. Weeks later, Lester told Lisa she might end up at the bottom of a lake. She barely escaped. The prosecution's argument was clear. Lester had a history of controlling, violent behavior toward women, and Page was likely his next victim. The defense claimed police had the wrong man. and hinted that other clients from Page's escort business could have had motive, but they failed to produce any convincing evidence to support that claim. Lester's current wife testified as well. Though she knew about his involvement with escorts, she admitted she couldn't provide an alibi for him the night Page disappeared. Worse, she identified him in the surveillance video, purchasing the disposable phone. Chapter 11. Justice. Delayed but delivered on September 9, 2016. The first jury came back deadlocked. A mistrial was declared, but the district attorney refused to give up. The evidence was overwhelming. The pattern of abuse, the deception, and the physical clues all pointed to one man in the second trial. Just 2 months later, the jury deliberated carefully. On November 21, 2016, they returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. Lester Ralph Jones was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. In June 2022, the Colorado Court of Appeals upheld his conviction, rejecting his attempt to reverse the ruling. Justice, after nearly a decade, was finally sealed. Chapter 12. A legacy of strength. Page Bergfeld was finally laid to rest on April 28, 2012. Her obituary described her as radiant, compassionate, and as warm as the sun. She was a mother who worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs and never missing a moment in her children's lives. Her death left a crater of grief in the lives of those who loved her. Her 3 children, once full of laughter and comfort under her care, were left motherless. Her case captured national attention, not just for the darkness surrounding it, but for what it revealed: the hidden lives, the unspoken struggles, and the unimaginable strength of women doing everything they can to survive. Today, Lester Jones sits behind bars, where he can no longer hurt another woman, and Page. She remains a symbol of courage, someone who fought in silence, but whose story shouted louder than her killer ever expected. Her memory endures, and thanks to those who never gave up, justice finally found its way home.